Naruto is a manga series by Masashi Kishimoto published by Shueisha in Japan Shonen Jump and Viz Media in the American Shonen Jump. The anime series is produced by Studio Pierrot and Aniplex for TV Tokyo and Animax, with Viz Media having gone through multiple networks over the years. I don't own the series. I make no money out of doing this. Please support the official release. Hello, and welcome to my premiere fanfiction, The Slug Prince. I got the idea for this while reading another fanfiction and decided to put my own twist to it. So let me know what you think and hope you enjoy. Ooh. Chapter 1. One Day Special. Today's ramen comes with free scrolls. It had not been a good day for Naruto. As the blonde genin took his usual seat at Ichiraku's, he decided to revise the statement and surmised that it had actually been more like a giant crap fest. He had made it through to the next stage of the Chunin exams and had a month to train. His sensei Kakashi had disappeared somewhere to train the damned Uchiha, and Irika had too many classes and too much paperwork to give him any time. He had thanked the heavens when Ebisu-san had offered his services, but he had disappeared after Pervy Sage had knocked him out. This brought Naruto's thoughts to the present and his newest betrayal. Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin of Konoha, though all Naruto had seen was an absurdly strong, perverted old man. With his ninja centerfold, he had managed to get the Pervy Sage to agree to train him. He had done something to his stomach that had fixed the ache he had been feeling since his fight with the snake guy in the Forest of Death, and had taught him to walk on water. But just when they were talking about toad summoning, Sakura had shown up, and Jiraiya had ended his role as Naruto's mentor and walked away whispering into the Pinkette's ear about training her to become the first female Hokage. "It's just not fair, why no?" the blonde genin screamed, slamming his fists on the counter. "Calm down, brat. You are disturbing my meal." Naruto turned to his neighbor, an old man with bandages across half his face, a tuft of hair sticking out at the top, and an X-shaped scar on his chin. He looked as old as Grandpa Hokage. Naruto bowed his head in apology. "Sorry, Grandpa. It's just not fair, you know." The old man shook his head while he ate some more ramen. "No, I don't know, but perhaps you want to talk about it? I'm Shimura Danzo. What is yours?" Naruto ordered some ramen for himself and had a mouthful before he said anything else. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto, Orange Genin of Konohagakure, and I'm probably going to stay that, you know. I thought when Irika-sensei acknowledged me as a ninja of Konoha and my joining Team 7 meant I was finally going to be a ninja who protects Konoha and serve my village and have friends, comrades I could count on, you know. I thought I would get real training and become strong so I can achieve my dream of becoming the next Hokage, the best ninja of the whole village. I was going to be the greatest Hokage, the greatest defender of the village, so everyone would finally respect me and see me as a ninja who loved his village and not as a demon. Instead, I've been reminded how gullible I can be. Kakashi, sensei, who gave this big speech about teamwork, has run off with his precious Uchiha to train him. Uchiha is getting further and further ahead of me, and just when I think I might have found someone else to train me, Sakura-chan steals him because he's a pervert and she's not a boy." Naruto finished his bowl and rested his head on the table. "How can I get strong enough to protect my village when no one will give me a chance, you know?" The leader of Root was at a loss. The man who lead Konoha's even blacker Black Ops had decided to treat himself to his secret passion for Ichiraku ramen and had come face to face with Konoha's Jinchukuri. He had been planning to take the power of the Kyuubi for himself. He'd laced his left arm with Sharingan eyes and injected himself with the first Hokage's blood for that very purpose. And yet he now found himself losing the desire to do such a thing. The Jinshu, Naruto's words struck a chord in him. As a child, he had always felt like he was always trying to catch up to Tsuru, the Sandaime Hokage. He loved Konoha too, and he'd always wanted to be Hokage himself, to be the great protector of the village. Years before, he had attempted to forge an alliance with Hanzo the Salamander to that end, but that plan had fallen apart. In fact, he now felt ashamed of the planned coup, to his own surprise. Danzo had long thought the same as many, that Uzumaki Naruto was the nine-tailed demon fox in human form, a menace. Now he saw his own reflection, a little boy struggling for recognition and chasing the shadow of his teammate. He had known his father and grandfather had died to protect the village, but though he knew Naruto's parents had given their lives to protect the village, the Orange Genin of Konoha did not. He knew nothing of his heritage. He agreed with Sarutobi that the name Namikaze would have drawn the Yondaime Hokage's attention, but the Uzumaki name had an allure too. They had once had their own village and specialized in Fuinjutsus. Seals. He had researched them a great deal when he had been developing his own seals and had a number of their scrolls with him on this day. What you told me today gives me pause for thought, young Uzumaki. I will admit that I already knew who you were before you introduced yourself, and I have borne you an ill will for as long as you have lived. But what you have said today has given me a new perspective. You speak of your love for Konoha and your desire to be her #1 protector. I share that dream, but I fear my team has passed, so I think I shall help you. He reached into his bag and made a mental note to have the root files on Uzumaki Naruto moved from the enemy section and into the ally section. The Uzumaki were a very prestigious family of ninja. They had close familial ties to the Senju family, who founded Konoha, and they themselves had their own village. These scrolls contain their history and their jutsus. They are your birthright. I'm afraid I can't afford the time to train you myself, but I am sure that you can overcome tis obstacle. In fact, I shall put a small sum on you to win in your match, so don't let me down. With that, the old man that had just overturned the Orange Genin's life in a matter of minutes stood and walked away. Naruto ran home, clutching the Uzumaki scrolls tightly to his chest. He literally could not believe his own luck. A man he had never met before had given him a way of possibly winning. He locked the door and pulled his training schedule to start rearranging his training. He'd never done any work on Fuinjutsu, but he had high hopes considering they were part of his very bloodline. Some of the designs made him think of his own seal. An Uzumaki must have designed it or had a hand in its creation. He also realized the crest that decorated his coat and the flak jackets of every Chunin and Jonin in Konoha was in fact the Uzumaki clan symbol. When Grandpa Scary Chin had said the Uzumakis and the sun just were close, he meant it. In the Hokage's office, Sarutobi Hiruzen was working his way through paperwork when there came a knock at the door. Who could be calling at this hour? The Sandaime Hokage mused as he went to the door. Hello, Saru, old friend. May I come in? With a great deal of sputtering, Hiruzen led his old friend and rival into the office they had both dreamed of working in as children. As he lit his pipe, Hiruzen turned to the seated Danzo and asked him why he had come. I had an interesting conversation with Uzumaki Naruto. Hiruzen tensed at this. He knew his old friend had some extremist views, and an interest in Naruto could prove hazardous. I've done some terrible things, so Hiruzen stifled a gasp of shock. I've always believed that we ninja should hide in the shadows, and I've been vicious in dealing with any perceived enemy of Konoha. But that boy, I saw him as a possible tool, but when he started to tell me what he has experienced, I felt my heart go out to him. I have felt some of what he had felt, though not as severely. He wants to be the Hokage, the #1 defender of Konoha. After all he has had to endure, he still wants to protect Konoha. But he is ignored by his teachers, and he feels he is falling further and further behind his peers. I can't help but sympathize. Hiruzen smiled. You're finally starting to see my side after all these years. It's about time, old friend. Meanwhile, Naruto was poring over the Uzumaki Fuinjutsu scrolls till he stopped at one that caught his eye. In Seal. The ninja stores chakra in a focus point and can use it in the event of chakra exhaustion or for certain derived jutsu. C. Creation Rebirth, invented by Senju Tsunade. Tsunade? Naruto took a moment to try and remember where he'd heard that name when it came to him. Tenten. Lee's teammate had given a 3-hour speech about her. The speech was supposed to make point about how Kunoichi could be just as good as Shinobi, if not better. It had instead convinced everyone that Tenten's interests lay in the fairer sex. Senju Tsunade was the granddaughter of the Shodai Hokage, trained by the Sandaime Hokage, and the primary force for the inclusion of Irionin into ninja teams. One of the legendary Sannin, like Pervy Sage. Naruto made a note to visit Tenten to get some more information on Tsunade, and set to work on crafting the Yin seal. He thought back to one of his few conversations with Pervy Sage. Another chakra, a different color from his normal chakra that he could use. If he could make this Fuinjutsu work, he could channel the red chakra there and use it whenever instead of just when he's angry. I gave him the Uzumaki scrolls. Hiruzen dropped his pipe. You had them then? I always wondered where they had gone. Grandma Mito always said you were popping over for Fuinjutsu lessons. Danzo sipped at his tea and gave his old friend and longtime rival a long stare. If he's going to live as an Uzumaki and not a Namikaze, then he may as well have access to all of his Uzumaki heritage. It had been Hiruzen's decision that the boy be given his mother's family name, believing his mother's name might attract less attention than his father's. It was very kind of you to give him that, but I have looked over the matchups for the next part of the Chunin exams, and I'm not sure if Fuinjutsu will help him much against the Jukin specialist. Danzo began to laugh. So much so, he had to put his cup down. Hiruzen was in two minds about what he was seeing. On the one hand, he had never seen Danzo laugh with so much glee in decades. On the other hand, Danzo clearly knew something about the Uzumaki clan that he didn't, and that bothered him. Hiruzen relit his pipe and continued to enjoy the company of an old friend. Naruto found himself in a dark corridor. The floor was flooded, and the place looked like nobody had set foot there in years. He heard a rumble and moved towards the sound. He came to a room with a huge gate and a large seal was stuck to it. Hello, is anyone here? I'm looking for a fox. He's supposed to be really big and has 9 tails. The room shook with a roar, and a large pair of red eyes appeared on the other side of the gate. Who dares disturb me? Naruto fell to the ground with a splash. Okay, perhaps taunting the demon that nearly destroyed Konoha was not the best plan, but it's done, and at least now he knew where he was. He cleared his throat and stepped up to the gate. Hi there, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm your Jinchukuri, you know. Listen, your chakra leaks out a bit, and it's been really hand at times, but I would really like to be able to turn it on and off, so I've set up a Yin seal to store the chakra for when I need it. Now, since you're living in me, you're more like a tenant. So let's make that red chakra your rent, and you just send it there you know. The fox hit the gate hard. Insolent brat. Do you know who I am? The fox snarled with contempt at his newest Jinchukuri. No, I don't. So what's your name? I am. What did you just say? Team 7. Team 7 is going to undergo a serious change in dynamic when it's reformed, and even I'm not sure how much it will change. Sakura. Yeah, she stole Jiraiya, and she's 13. She cheated, and it will get covered the next time we see her. Updates, probably every 2 to 3 days. I'm feeling ambitious. Chapter 2. High Emotion. A new teacher explodes onto the scene. In the village of the Hidden Leaf, a Chunin proctor was dead, and the members of ANBU, elite ninja in the service of the Hokage, were on high alert. Orochimaru was nearby, and Yakushi Kabuto had been revealed as a traitor. Even more distressing was the news of the alliance between Orochimaru and the Kazekage of Sunagakure. Hiruzen had not revealed this bit of information to the elders because to do so would compromise his newfound source. The Sandaime Hokage walked to the window of his office and whispered, "Thank you, Naruto." Tintin winced in pain as she made her way home from helping her teammates' training. After 2 weeks of helping Niji perfect his Hakusho she was feeling bruises everywhere. In truth, she was holding back in the exercises, not out of a hesitance for injuring a teammate, but for her own sake. In her match with Sabaku no Temari, the Sand sibling had driven her folded fan into the Konoha Kunoichi's back. She had walked home after the match, but her back had continued to trouble her. She pulled out her Irionin scroll and wondered if she should try using Shosen Jutsu again, but shook her head. She had long given up trying to be a legendary Irionin like her idol Tsunade-sama. When she had tried to perform Shosen Jutsu, the fish had quickly died. She considered what had happened to her team. She had been defeated humiliatingly quickly. Lee was in hospital and would probably never return to being a ninja in Niji. Niji had revealed a darkness in his soul that she hadn't seen before. To think he could inflict so much damage on his own cousin. Suddenly, Tenin's back exploded into spasms of pain. She fell to her knees and saw the floor getting closer when she felt someone catch her. She felt her body being lifted up. She looked up to see who her Samaritan, but soon didn't need to see a face. There was only one person in Konoha that wore that much orange. Naruto, the orange genin of Konoha, had been on his way to visit Tenten and saw her collapse. She said his name and then passed out. Holding her in his arms, he made his way to her family's shop. Tenten's family didn't use their surname except for trade. They were Konoha's specialty blacksmiths when ninja wanted to pay the higher price for better quality weapons. Her father, Katanakaji, had begun creating weapons and tools with built-in Fuinjutsu. His best-selling piece were nunchaku with Fujitsu Kyuin built in. He got through the door and made his way to the stairs and what he guessed would be her room until... Tenten. The voice boomed, and a large man sporting a mullet with spiked hair and holding a hammer burst through a wall to stand before Naruto. "What have you done to my daughter, you ruffian?" Katanakaji suddenly ripped his shirt off to reveal a heavily muscled torso. "If you think you can attack my darling daughter and then sneak like an eel into my place of business and into my abode, then I shall have to show you why I am called the everlasting Titan of the Hidden Leaf." With that, he struck a pose that made his muscles bulge and shine in the light. He's kind of like Caterpillar Brows and Bushy Brow Sensei. "No, sir. Your daughter collapsed. So, I brought her here, you know. And I have been studying Iryo Ninjutsu. So, I thought I could find out what was wrong, you know, and treat it before you knew, so she didn't get in trouble for overdoing it with her training." Naruto kept his eyes closed, waiting for his head to be knocked off. When that didn't happen, he opened his eyes. The everlasting Titan of the Hidden Life was crying, his hammer lying forgotten on the floor. "That there is such a true gentleman in your generation who would do such a thing for a fellow ninja. Orange-garbed IRYONI in training. I am deeply moved." Katanakaji patted Naruto's shoulder with such force that he wondered if he'd need Shosen Jutsu for himself. "Tenten's room is thought orange, gentlemen. Might I know your name as you know mine?" Naruto made his way up. "My name's Uzumaki Naruto, future Hokage." When Tenten woke, she could tell it was nighttime. She took a moment to assess her surroundings. She was in her room, and she was on her front with her face on its side to allow her to breathe. And her top had been removed. She immediately surged up to cover herself and froze. There was no shooting pain or spasms in her back. In fact, it was better than ever. She checked herself over, and all of the bruises from training with Niji were healed too. She refastened her top and turned to see Naruto enter her room with a tray of food and a bundle of scrolls. "What is the meaning of this?" Naruto looked at her with a vacant look. "Your dad made dinner, and I brought some up in case you'd woken up. Your dad handed me these scrolls to go over if what I was doing wasn't enough. They're actually what I come to see you about, so it's kind of funny if you don't count the part where you passed out, you know?" Tenten took a moment to look at her orange Samaritan. He was different. He wasn't wearing his jacket, and he had taken off his hitayate. She could see he had a gem on his forehead, and through the mesh shirt, she could see what appeared to be a tattoo on his belly that was fading. The team guy Kunoichi considered herself an authority on Fuinjutsu. It was her specialty in her team, so she knew that she was seeing. The one on Naruto's belly was a mystery, but she could recognize the gem on the orange genin's forehead was clearly the Yin seal that Tsunadeheim herself had used. These details were curious enough, but what he had said raised further questions. For her father to have given Naruto her Iryo Ninjutsu scrolls, it would mean that Naruto was the reason her back was fine and her injuries had healed. It didn't gel in her head. When she had seen Naruto in combat, he had been clumsy and often resorted to Kagebunshin no Jutsu and pranks. Furthermore, to have done such a good job, he would need to have an incredibly high level of chakra control. "Naruto, what are you doing with Tsunadeheim's seal on your head? Why do you want to look at my scrolls, and when did you learn Iryo Ninjutsu?" Naruto pulled his jacket back on and sat next to Tenten while she took the dinner out of his hands. The Yin seal is actually an Uzumaki clan Fuinjutsu. Tsunade's grandma used the same Fuinjutsu, and her name was Uzumaki Mido. I got the Uzumaki scrolls a little over a week ago, and when I saw the name of Tsunade, I thought of your speech. So I thought you'd probably have more information on her. I've been practicing Iryo Ninjutsu about the same amount of time. The Uzumaki clan specialized in Fuin Jutsu, but they also had a bunch of Iryo Ninjutsu exercises. Tintin felt a cold sweat on the back of her neck. Iryo Ninjutsu required perfect chakra control, and the dead last genin had apparently mastered Shosen Jutsu. Naruto, if you're really wanted to going up against Niji, you can't just have Fuin Jutsu and Iryo Ninjutsu. Niji is a Juken genius, and now that he's mastered, I can't tell you. Can't Hataki-sen teach you some more taijutsu or some long-range ninjutsu? Naruto chuckled, more to himself than at Tintin. It's all right, Tenshan. This Ein seal is handier than you might realize. And Kakashi-sensei is too busy with Uchiha. The door burst from its hinges, and Katanakaji entered looking furious and holding 2 bowls of ice cream. Naruto-kun, I came to bring you and Tintenheim some delicious dessert, but your words have stolen the joy that I had intended to serve you with. How can your sensei not want to see such a gentleman ninja succeed? Naruto took a moment to recover from the shock of the intrusion, then simply sighed and shrugged his shoulders. It is decided then. I shall teach you taijutsu and help you train as reward for your skills in helping my beloved daughter. Tintin was a deep red by this point. Naruto, on the other hand, felt no such embarrassment. He leapt into the air and hugged his new sensei. Thank you, Mullet Sensei. I look forward to any task you set for me. Tintin held her breath, expecting an explosion at the nickname. Instead, her father pulled the boy into a tighter hug. To think that a teacher and student can become close enough to bestow nicknames after such a short time is so moving. Wa'ag. The hug and the crying and laughing continued till they managed to collect themselves. Naruto, I must give you a nickname too, as you have master techniques of the legendary Sannin Tsunade. The Slug Princess, I shall call you Slug Prince. Come here tomorrow at dawn, and we shall begin your training. Tintenheim, after I have cleaned the dishes, I shall come up to say goodnight. Then your friend needs to go home, okay? Tintin nodded, and Katanakaji left. Tintin turned to Naruto. How do you do that? Naruto looked at the kunoichi with a confused look. Do what? Tintin sighed, of course. She noticed some messy stitching on his jacket and trousers. Some of them looked fresh. Naruto, are you having money trouble? Naruto sputtered at this. Was it really that obvious? Then how come nobody else had? It's nothing, I got basic living expenses while I was at the academy, and I get some from missions. According to the Uzumaki scrolls, I think I might have an inheritance, but the accounts are apparently at a post station near to the village, but we can't leave unless we're in our team, or are at least shouldn't. I tried looking for Kakashi-sensei, and I left a message like a week ago, but I've not heard from him, and if I even try asking Pervy Sage Jiraiya, then Sakura tells me to back off of her sensei. Tintin fumed. Basic living expenses or not, she knew for a fact that missions paid well enough to buy decent clothes to replace damaged ones. It meant that someone on Team 7 was helping themselves to Naruto's cut, and the orange genin was too naive to realize. She decided she had to help him out. Naruto, if you're finding Iryo Ninjutsu so interesting, have you thought of getting some work at the medical center? I used to work there between missions when I first joined Team Guy, and I could probably get you an interview. Naruto smiled and nodded in gratitude, then got a serious look. Tenshan, why did you switch from Iryo Ninjutsu to Fuinjutsu? You seemed really into becoming the next Tsunade. It was Tintin's turn to look serious. It turns out I have no real talent for Iryo Ninjutsu. I have plenty of chakra reserves and stamina, but I just don't have that level of accuracy like I do with weapons. But that's fine. Even if I can't perform Iryo Ninjutsu, I know I can still be a splendid kunoichi like Tsunadeheim. Naruto started laughing. Tintin looked confused, so Naruto explained. Tintin, just then you sounded like caterpillar brows. Tintin blushed, but joined in. When they finished, they both thought about Lee's condition. Naruto got up and turned to the kunoichi. Tintin, I'm going to work my hardest at my Iryo Ninjutsu and find a way to help Lee recover. I promise. He smiled and gave her a thumb up. Tintin blushed. The nice guy pose was used by Lee and Guy Sensei when they made an unbreakable vow. She realized that Naruto had every intention of making this promise happen, and she actually believed him. Thank you, Naruto. But can I ask one more favor of you? Naruto nodded. I know that with Lee in hospital, it would seem that he's the only one of our team in trouble, but I must confess I am more worried about Niji. What he did to Hinata was so brutal and angry, like nothing I'd seen before. I fear he has started on a dark path of hatred, and I don't think I can get him off of it. Can you try and help him? Naruto looked at her with a serious face. I promised to beat him. Now I'll beat some sense into him too. It must have something to do with the Hyuga clan. What do you know about him? Tintin considered his question. Not much. He doesn't really like to talk about himself. I know his father died around 10 years ago, and he's a member of the branch house, the protectors of the main house. Hinata is his paternal cousin. Their fathers were twins. Niji's father was the younger of them, which is why he's in the branch house. Aside from that, I can't think of anything else. Do you want to head to the medical center tomorrow after Dad's training session? Naruto nodded and made his way to the door. Naruto, will you do it? Will you save Niji? Naruto opened the door and gave her the nice guy pose again. Count on it 10, Sean. You can tell Fuzzy Brow Sensei that I promised to help Team Guy. Outside, Naruto made his way home and considered the direction his day had gone. He had successfully performed Shosen Jutsu on another person and obtained new Iryo Ninjutsu scrolls that were connected to a legendary Sannin. He had gained a new friend, and with it came the possibility of a paying job and some proper taijutsu training. He had also promised to restore Team Guy. He wondered if he should have brought up what he had discovered during his research. Maybe, but he decided he wasn't going to use the information unless it was absolutely necessary. He cleared his throat and stepped up to the gate. Hi there, I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm your Jinchukuri, you know. Listen, your chakra leaks out a bit and it's been really hand at times, but I would really like to be able to turn it on and off, so I've set up an Ein seal to store the chakra for when I need it. Now, since you're living in me, you're more like a tenant, so let's make that red chakra your rent, and you just send it there you know. The fox hit the gate hard. Insolent brat. Do you know who I am? The fox snarled with contempt at his newest Jinchukuri. No, I don't. So what's your name? I am. What did you just say? Naruto moved closer to the cage. I asked your name. You know mine, and if we're going to work together, I should know my comrade's name. Kyubi snorted. Comrades with a brat like you? Besides, what makes you think I'd have a name? The words of Uchiha Madara circled in his mind. You are just a mass of chakra to be used by strong ninja like me. Everyone should have a name. How can we acknowledge each other if we don't know each other's names? I can't very well say, thank you, Fox, or thank you, Ninetales, you know. The demon fox, known to many as Kyubi, wasn't sure he could control himself at this point. He began to growl. You seem to be angry a lot, you know? Maybe if we could be friends, you wouldn't have to be so angry all the time, you know. The fox collected himself and tried to sound as tough as possible. How about this, brat? I'll send chakra to your new seal, and you can do whatever you like with it. If I am impressed, then I will give you my name. Naruto grinned. Deal. Chapter 3. Everything's new. New teacher, new job, and new training. To find what affinity someone has, pieces of paper made from a special type of tree that are grown and fed with chakra are used that react to even the slightest hint of chakra in any number of ways, depending on the nature latent in the chakra. A fire affinity will ignite the paper and turn it to ash. A wind affinity will split the paper in two. A lightning affinity will wrinkle the paper. An earth affinity will cause the paper to turn to dirt and crumble away. Finally, those with a water affinity will make the paper wet or damp. Copy ninja Kakashi held a piece of paper out to his prized student Uchiha Sasuke. If I am to teach you my special technique, we need to see that you have the right affinity. Sasuke paused as he reached out for the paper. Where's Uzumaki? He's in the next stage of the exams too. He wasn't sure why he started to care about Naruto's development. He knew that to wake the man Gekyo, he had to kill his best friend, but since the mission where they fought Zabuza, he had felt an affection. Maybe this is what it was to have a friend. He decided to let the emotion run through him. He needed a real friend. He couldn't awaken the man Gekyo by killing a fake friend. Uzumaki Naruto has proven that he isn't ready to become a chunin. You do. Now take this paper. Sasuke lifted the paper up, and the reaction was almost instantaneous. The paper wrinkled till it looked ancient and burst into a brilliant flame that continued to burn for some time. Well then, it appears you have an affinity for fire and lightning. Excellent. Hey, Mullet Sensei, I thought you were going to teach me taijutsu, you know. Why do I need to do this paper test thing? Katanakaji pushed the paper forward again, with a more resolute face this time. With your lack of training in certain basics and mastery of high-level jutsus, simple taijutsu is the wrong way to go with such a short time left. I shall teach you nintaijutsu, close combat that incorporates ninjutsu in the attack. I shall also train you in the use of a weapon that best suits your elemental affinity. Now let's get on with this. Naruto held the paper tightly and waited for it to react. Suddenly, the paper fell apart. Wind affinity. Very good, I have just the weight. Katanakaji and Naruto looked again as the paper then went on to wrinkle. Lightning nature. It's a bit delayed, which suggests it's perhaps only developing now that you're learning Iryo Ninjutsu. Naruto gave him a confused look. Why would me learning something affect my affinity? Katanakaji picked up the pieces of paper and scrunched it in his hand. There's always the potential to learn different elements, even without having an affinity, but an affinity can change with our bodies too. Iryo Ninjutsu deals with the body, and the body doesn't just have chakra flowing around it. There's also electrical signals coming from the brain. You were clearly born with a wind affinity, but your new experiences with this difficult area of ninjutsu has forced your body to adapt. Naruto nodded in understanding. I see. So what are you going to train me in? Swords? Staves? Katanakaji stood and brought down an ornate box. It was decorated with wind iconography. He opened the box to reveal 2 black Tessen iron fans. Fans? I'm going to beat Niji with little fans? That Sunakunoichi at least had a giant one, but these... Katanakaji picked one of them and flung it across the room toward the training dummy. The Tessen sliced through the dummy and lodged itself 6 inches into the stone wall. After retrieving it, Katanakaji handed them both to an awed Naruto. I found these Tessen on the battlefield during the Third Shinobi War. There's no record of them, so we named them Swirl and Swoop. They're made from a steel that never dulls and never misses. Tessen Jutsu greatly complements wind-style jutsus. You will be able to channel wind chakra into your attacks. The speed and sharpness will increase at least tenfold. They began training, and once Naruto got over his reluctance towards using weapons that looked so flimsy, he found he had a natural talent for Tessen Jutsu. So you fought in the Third Shinobi War, Mullet Sensei? Why aren't you a Jonin, you know? Katanakaji surged forward and floored his student. I will not talk about it until you have fought in a real battle. You will not understand what I have experienced until then. Naruto looked at his sensei, and it was a look he had seen in his teammates during the mission to the Land of Waves, something he had felt too. Someone you knew died. A comrade. Katanakaji looked at him in shock. That someone so young could see the pain in others. Naruto sat himself back up. It was a mission in the Land of Waves. We walked into a fight way above our rank, you know. Zabuza and his student, a boy with special abilities called Haku, was better than any of us, and he managed to skewer Sasuke with a ton of Senbon. I thought he was dead. I knew from then on that we could die during a mission, that the life of a ninja was dangerous. It probably doesn't compare to what you must have seen, you know, but I think I get why you wouldn't want to do it anymore. You can't bear to see your comrades die, but you still want to help, so you make stuff that can protect them. Katanakaji didn't get the chance to reply, because that was when Tenten appeared. Naruto-kun, we need to get going if you want to reach your interview on time. Grab a shower, and I'll pack your things. Naruto nodded and ran out. The young Kunoichi collected the Tessen Jutsu scrolls and put them in Naruto's bag with Swirl and Swoop and waved goodbye to her dad before running out. The weapons master of Konoha sat down and sobbed. How could this child have gone through so much by his age that he could empathize with a shell-shocked former MBU? He had removed himself from the affairs of other ninja for nearly 20 years after the death of his first wife. His second wife ran a small smithy, and when he started working there, he soon turned it into what it was today. He kept his former comrades safe and provided for his family, but the hurt remained. The loss of Mai had nearly killed him. There was barely anything left of him when he met Hana. Naruto wanted to be Hokage, and Katanakaji believed he would. He was his father's son. At the Konoha Medical Center, the Irionin Maite was again looking at Rock Lee's lab results. His body was a mess. It seemed most of his bones had been broken at some time or another, and the strain of opening his chakra gates had shaken his old injuries open. All of this, combined with the damage done by a partial Sabaku Q, had destroyed this young man. That this boy was recovering at all was a miracle. He desperately wanted something to show to Might Guy that would give him hope. It had broken Maite's heart to see a man he had seen as a role model for pushing yourself to succeed just sitting outside a room for days on end. Maite sensei. Maite turned to the source of the voice to see his old assistant. When he had just started at the center, a young girl had started to follow him around. Her name was Tenten. She said she wanted to be a splendid kunoichi like Tsunade, but it had become apparent that she had no ability when it came to Iryo Ninjutsu, and she had stopped coming not long after. Earlier that day, she had surprised him with a visit and a request. She had a friend in the Chunin exams who had little to no money and had been learning Iryo Ninjutsu and Fuinjutsu. For what she had said, he had real talent. He smiled. Tintin, it's good to see you so soon after your last visit. Have you brought this potential staff member? She nodded and brought his attention to an orange-garbed blonde. His hitae was tied around his neck, his cheeks had markings like whiskers, and he had a diamond fixed to his forehead. Uzumaki Naruto's appearance had changed since he had last seen him. Uzumaki, I must be frank with you. From what I have seen, you can't possibly be the same person Tenten was telling me about. In your fight with Inuzuka, you showed poor chakra control and won through luck. Tenten pulled Maite to face her. Maite-sensei, Naruto-kun has been training nonstop and used Shozenjutsu perfectly. Maite knew Tenten wasn't in the habit of lying, so decided to give her the benefit of the doubt for this. All right then, Naruto, you're a member of Team 7, right? What has Ataki-san taught you? Naruto seemed uncomfortable at this. Tree walking. Maite motioned for him to continue. That's it. Maite dropped his files. What? But he's had you for 6 months. He nominated your team for the Chunin exams. Have you learned nothing else? Naruto nodded. I met a ninja called Jiraiya who taught me water walking. Then there was a ninja called Shimura who gave me the Uzumaki clan scrolls, and I started working through them by myself, and today I started learning Tessenjutsu with Tenchan's father. According to the chakra paper test, I have an affinity for wind and lightning. Maite was stunned. If Tenten and Naruto were both telling the truth, then Naruto was a self-taught Iryo Ninjutsu prodigy. And the names he had mentioned, Jiraiya was the legendary Toad Sage, and yet he had apparently walked away from being this Genin's mentor. The second name gave him further pause. Shimura Danzo was a conservative man and a powerful ninja with a long history of fighting for Konoha from the shadows. Out of all the ninja Naruto had met, it was Danzo that had given the boy a chance to flourish. I can put you on the rota for general medical assistance, bedside manner, a bit of paperwork, and cataloging stock. I'll give you some exercises to work on, and if by the end of the week I'm satisfied, I'll move you into a nursing position until we can properly put you into the medical program, which would probably be after the Chunin exams. Maite took out a pen and wrote on a piece of paper. This will be your hourly wage, and if you want to start as soon as I could do with. He was interrupted by a yell from the blonde Genin. This much an hour? Give me a 2-hour shift, and that's more than I'd make in one mission. Tenten and Maite shared a look. Irionin's salary was quite comfortable, but for those just starting it was worse than Genin mission pay, a way of weeding out those who weren't committed to the level of study Iryo Ninjutsu required. If this rate of pay was better in Naruto's eyes, then someone had been taking most of Naruto's pay. Alright, things to do you know. Gahebunsin no Hutsu. Suddenly, there was a small fleet of Uzumakis in the corridor. The original stepped forward. All right, guys, you lot go to the training grounds. You guys go home and work on Maitate Sensei's jutsu exercises. The rest of us are going to work here the rest of the day. Maitate Sensei, just point us where you need us, you know. Maitate felt a cold sweat coming down the back of his neck. What had he agreed to? Maitate desperately tried to pull the files from his pupil. Naruto, these are Lee's personal files. You aren't authorized to read them. Naruto pulled again. How am I supposed to fix him if you won't show me what's wrong? Idiot, I'm supposed to fix him. You're not an official Irionin yet. Stop pretending you are. Naruto hadn't needed a week to prepare for his test. He'd completed them all before the end of his second shift. He had even managed to efficiently coordinate all his clones across the entire medical center. Maitate was ready to believe that he would go down in history as the man who trained the greatest Irionin in history. The only problem was that Naruto was very eager to reach the next level. He had taken to wearing an Irionin uniform, beige shoes and trousers, beige high-collared long coat, and a beige bandana. He had customized it with an orange sash wrapped around his waist and the Uzumaki clan crest decorating the shoulders and back. Naruto had managed to get a copy of Lee File in the end and was studying it at Ichiraka Ramen when he saw a familiar face walk by. Shikamaru, hey, want to have some ramen with me? The lazy genin walked over to his friend to see if he could get a free meal. It would be a bother to pay for a meal. I've been invited to Naruto. Naruto shook his head. It's fine, Shika. I'm making good money now. I can definitely pay for you, you know? Shikamaru noticed a coat from the medical center, and the folder Naruto was looking at was clearly also from the medical center. He sat down next to his old pranking friend and asked him, Naruto, why does it look like you're studying to be an Irionin? Naruto handed Shikamaru a bowl of ramen. Because I am? I'm actually already an unofficial Irionin at the moment. They aren't bringing anyone onto the program until after the Chunin exams are finished, but I've finished the basic medical staff training and I've been helping with various treatments too. Right now I'm trying to see if there's anything the others missed about Caterpillar Brow's prognosis. I think it might be a way if we could just get his chakra working harder, you know. Shikamaru didn't know that. He also didn't know what had happened to his friend. He had gone from a rough and tumble prankster to a cheerful and ambitious doctor. Naruto, you do know we've got the Chunin exams coming soon? And you said you were going to wipe the floor with Hyuga, freaking Niji? How is performing surgery going to make you able to beat a Juken prodigy? It would be such a bother if, after all that noise, you went and failed. Naruto lifted a piece of wood and ran his hand over it in a pattern. Letters began to appear, carved into the wood. Intense situations gives birth to rapid growth. Iryo ninjutsu requires mega accuracy, you know? I now have much better control over my chakra, and I have come up with a number of ways to beat an opponent. I've also been training with Tenen's dad. He says I've made serious progress. I'll be more than ready to face Niji. Shikamaru didn't get it. He just wanted to live an ordinary life and do as little as possible, get married and have some kids and retire early so he can spend his days looking at clouds and playing shogi. Why do I work so hard? It's such a bother. Naruto shook his head and ordered some more ramen. You don't get it, Shika. You work hard now and get to the highest level of your field, then you can get what you want. At the medical center, the best Irionin get their pick of cases. They can get away with one a month if they are that good. Shikamaru hadn't thought of that. Low-level ninja don't really get the option to have their pick of missions like the top-tier ones. The jobs would obviously be harder and bothersome, but the level of time off he could get. This changed things. Maybe Asuma-sensei was still in the mood for training. Hey Shika, do you want to drop in and see Caterpillar Brows tomorrow? Maybe he can convince you to not be such a lazy ass. He grinned, his way of convincing people to do what he wants. He sighed, it would be too much of a bother to start seriously training now, and it might be nice to see if this Lee guy had any training pointers he could use. They entered Lee's room to find the red-headed boy from Sunagakure standing over their fellow Konoha genin, his sand swirling over the bed like a serpent preparing to strike. What do you think you're doing? Naruto yelled as the red-head turned. I was trying to kill him. He made to approach them, but found himself frozen in place. He looked down to see his shadow being touched by another shadow. Shikamaru held the red head in Kage Main no Jutsu. Why is there a need for you to do that? You already beat him. What is your grudge with a crippled genin? Shikamaru found himself worrying. The redhead had been utterly calm despite their interruption and despite his paralysis. Could he still manipulate his sands? Were his teammates nearby and watching? This situation was fast becoming less bothersome and more dangerous. I have no grudge. Both Konoha Genin looked at the redhead in shock. I'm going to kill him just because I want to kill him. Chapter 4. A Reason to Live. Gaara's darkened view. They entered Lee's room to find the red-headed boy from Sunagakure standing over their fellow Konoha Genin, his sand swirling over the bed like a serpent preparing to strike. What do you think you're doing? Naruto yelled as the red-head turned. I was trying to kill him. He made to approach them, but found himself frozen in place. He looked down to see his shadow being touched by another shadow. Shikamaru held the redhead in Kage Main no Jutsu. Why is there a need for you to do that? You already beat him. What is your grudge with a crippled genin? Shikamaru found himself worrying. The redhead had been utterly calm despite their interruption and despite his paralysis. Could he still manipulate his sands? Were his teammates nearby and watching? This situation was fast becoming less bothersome and more dangerous. I have no grudge. Both Konoha Genin looked at the redhead in shock. I'm going to kill him just because I want to kill him. What the hell? You selfish prick. You think you can people on a whim? What kind of spoiled brat are you? Naruto, raged from his position, stood next to Shikamaru as they tried to stare down the visiting ninja from Sunagakure. Shikamaru tried to think. This guy is acting far too calm about everything. And he's dangerous. I don't know what kind of training Naruto has been getting, but going for my own ability and what I know, if we fight now, we'll be killed. Naruto tapped Shikamaru's shoulder and nodded for him to move them to Lee. With Kage Main in effect, Gaara was forced to walk around, and soon they were stood where each other had been. The sand still lingered over Lee's body. If you get in my way, I'll kill you too. Gaara's expression didn't change. Oh yeah. Naruto's hand tapped the nearby table, and a seal popped into the air. That was my personal alarm seal. All my Kages have been alerted, and they'll inform the medical staff and all the ninja in the area. Do you really think you can get away with killing 3 ninja before someone shows up? Shikamaru shivered. When did Naruto learn to create such a useful jutsu? Naruto, stop provoking this guy. His strength is monstrous. Naruto snorted, causing both Shikamaru and Gaara to stare at the genin with confusion. I've got a real monster in me. I won't lose to a no-brows creep like you. Naruto grinned, not with a prankster's glee like Shikamaru had seen so often. This grin was one of confidence one's abilities. With his blonde hair and his medical center long coat, Naruto looked a lot like the pictures of the Yondaime Hokage. Gaara looked pensive. A monster, huh? Then it's the same for me. The 2 Konoha Genin looked surprised. On my father, the Kazekage's orders, I was infused with the living incarnation of sand, Shikaku. I killed the one I would have called mother on the day I was born. I was born a monster. Shikaku? The name vibrated in the mind of the orange genin. Shikaku isn't a sand spirit, Naruto. He's a weak-ass-tailed beast and the whiniest relative possible. Don't let him take control of the brat, Naruto. His voice grates. Naruto did his best to hide his shock. He's like me? Shikamaru forced a snort. With any luck, a show of bravado will make him look less scared. A possession jutsu at birth? Is that something a parent does? What a strange expression of love. Love. Gaara snorted at the word derisively. Don't judge me with your measuring stick. He took a moment to move the sand around them threateningly. Family? Let me tell you something about my family. They're just pieces of rancid meat swimming around me with hatred and murderous intent. Killing my mother proved my power, showed them I could be Sunagakure's masterpiece weapon. My father, the Kazekage, taught me the shinobi secrets and spoiled me. Let me do as I pleased. I thought that was love until... Naruto and Shikamaru pressed Gaara to continue. Until what? Gaara grinned as his eyes increased in size and the blood vessels became visible, making the previously emotionless ninja look unhinged. Until I was 6 years old, whereupon he decided to send assassins every day to kill me. Gaara continued to smile his disturbing smile. The village realized how dangerous I was and began to fear me. My father saw me as soon as trump card in a battle, but realized I was a very dangerous being. To the village, I am a constant reminder of their violent past that they wished would disappear. Suddenly, dynamic entry. A green streak burst through the door and slammed into the red-haired ninja. Mato Guy held Gaara pinned to the ground on his belly. What is the meaning of these hijinks in this room while my precious subordinate is convalescing? Shikamaru grimaced. Guy clearly knew what was happening. He must have got Naruto's alarm. Gaara moved and faced the two genin again. Surrounded by hatred, I began to wonder why I existed, why I lived. I couldn't think of anything. But if one lives, one needs a reason. Otherwise, you're no better than the dead. Shikamaru and Guy looked confused. What? Naruto stared at the Suno weapon and felt as though he was looking into a mirror. He's like me. Like us. The fox stirred. We've lived alone and surrounded by hatred. We strive to find recognition, a reason to live. When Irika-sensei acknowledged me, I got my reason, and the pain of loneliness didn't hurt as much. This poor fellow ninja. He hasn't had that. He only found a reason to exist by killing others. I felt alive when my pranks got me attention. Any attention. He only felt alive by ending lives. We are so alike, yet it's like we're from totally different worlds. Gaara concentrated his sand and pushed. Guy ended up against the wall, still battle-ready. Let me feel alive again, then. Gaara raved. Let me kill you. Come. Naruto walked over to him. Shikamaru began to sweat. Guy had undone the cage mane, and there was no way the young Nara clan member could call up the chakra to do it again. Whatever Naruto did, Shikamaru couldn't back him up. Naruto laid his hand on Gaara's shoulder. Hello, Gaara. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I'm going to heal the damage you've inflicted on Caterpillar Brows, and I'm going to heal your broken heart so that the love you feel won't just be a tattoo on your head. Gaara's sand crumbled as the words unsettled the redhead. He suddenly felt himself being lifted. I look forward to fighting you. Naruto then threw him out the window. What do you mean that wasn't an alarm? Shikamaru screamed. The window had been repaired and Guy was performing an unusual prayer at Lee's bedside, sending healing vibes, as the unusual ninja said. Naruto smirked. The seal canceled all my kages. The jutsu spreads my chakra across them all, so by canceling it, I will be facing no brows at full power. Do you not remember the patrol rotas we copied for our pranks? Jonin and Chunin that are on duty aren't anywhere near the medical center at this time of day. I was bluffing, you know. Shikamaru couldn't believe what he was hearing. Naruto gave Shikamaru's arm a squeeze. It worked out fine, Shika. Do you want to get some ramen? Shikamaru blushed. I have to go. I have training to do. Last week before the exams, right? He made a hasty exit, leaving a bewildered Naruto. Shikamaru took a deep breath. He was a slacker at heart and had always planned a life of small effort followed by a plain woman for marriage, children, and a quick retirement. He had always thought women were tiresome and annoying, but he also knew he was reaching an age where he was going to start noticing people. He had thought that he would start seeing women as less of a bother, but that hadn't changed. His teammate was proof of that. He knew he was pretty smart, but there had been one possibility he hadn't thought of. Naruto. Guy finished his prayer and turned towards the orange genin. I was talking to Tenin the other day, and she told me something interesting about you. Naruto wasn't sure if Guy was upset or not, and decided he couldn't back out of the coming conversation. I made a promise, and I'm going to keep it. He again made the nice guy pose. I will give my all and heal all of Team Guy. I will save Niji from his darkness, and I will find a way to get Lee back to tip-top condition. Guy welled up and pulled Naruto into a hug. Ow! Naruto! I never realized Lee had made such close friends that they would want to help so much. Guy bawled out some more things, but Naruto couldn't quite understand everything. Something about flames, youth, and springtime. Guy finally collected himself and handed a parcel to Naruto. As a token of my gratitude, take this. It should help greatly with your training. Naruto nodded and left Guy to continue his prayers. Danzo Shimura felt his whole body clench in agony and fell from his chair. Trouble, Danzo-san? A voice croaked from the shadows. A pale man with long jet-black hair emerged and took the fallen root leader's seat. Are my enhancements troubling you? Danzo snorted. He was well aware of Orochimaru's failsafe, a special genjutsu placed in the skin. If the Snake Sannin wanted, he could kill Danzo on a whim. Are the arrangements made? Danzo sat up. I have withdrawn all root members. They believe it is an important mission. When you attack, you will have only Konoha's regular forces and Sarutobi's ANBU to face. Bile rose in his throat as he toadied to the whims of a traitor. You hate me, don't you, Danzo? Danzo blinked. I know and I understand, you old warhawk. I betrayed Konoha. Ha! I just wanted to learn the secrets of immortality. The fact remains that you needed me to give you your enhancement, so you have to accept my price. Odo Geikure and Sunagakure will invade, and I will collect my new samples. Then Odo Geikure will pull out and leave you to return like big damn heroes. You'll no doubt become the next Hokage, and anything you want will be done by the council that will see you were right all along about keeping vigilant. The Kazekage is already dead, and they won't find out until I'm already gone. The plan is perfect, Danzo. Danzo stood up, his face gray. Did you have anything else to say, or did you just want to see me sprawl on the ground? Orochimaru chuckled and moved over to the door. Pleasure doing business with you, Godame Hokage. Ha ha ha. He sank into the ground as if swallowed by the shadows themselves. The Warhawk of Konoha went back to his desk and reached for his secret drawer. Imported whiskey. His other secret vice, after ramen at Ichiraku, was a sizable drink of Glenfiddich. As the drink burned its way down his throat, he thought of his last visit to Ichiraku. Naruto, had I only shared ramen with you sooner. Chapter 5, Sensei. Conversations and Guidance. Naruto gasped. T10-chan, it's so tight. I thought you said you'd done this before, you know? The Konoha Kunoichi grunted with effort. She'd only done this once before and had forgotten how hard it had been. Just hold it together, Naruto-kun. I'm almost done. She took a deep breath and moved closer. With a great sigh of relief, she said, Done. Naruto looked in the mirror and the outfit that Tenten had given him. It was a smart shirt, trousers, and bow tie. I'm not sure about this Ten-chan. It's not very functional, you know? I can barely breathe here. Tenten looked hurt. But Naruto-kun, you need a new outfit after what happened to your other outfit. It needed an update anyway. Plus, bow ties are cool. It makes you look like a proper doctor. Naruto shook his head, his eyes squinting and a frown on his face. Nah, not for a ninja. What was wrong with my old outfit? Tenten picked up the remains. Who knew that practicing fire diversion would lead to burning down half of the dojo? Naruto's wind nintaijutsu training had really paid off. His natural affinity and his own adaptability had led to some interesting new techniques developed on the fly. And his Tessenjutsu, when combined with his nintaijutsu, had gotten to the point where Katanakaji had to go all out. Tenten had never known that her father used tortoise summons. It's orange Naruto. Bright, eye-burning orange. Not the stealthiest color choice. Naruto sniffed. I wear orange because it's my favorite color. And I want people to see me Ten-chan. At this, Naruto began to look serious again. Tenten moved over to him and undid his bow tie. Naruto, why does everyone seem to hate you? Naruto looked surprised. The adults mutter about you, and all the other people our age said they do it because their parents did it. I don't understand it. And another thing, you said you could fight Niji-kun even without my father's training, but I can't see how. Naruto chuckled, causing Tenten to look at him curiously. Set up the dummies downstairs, and I'll show you what I was talking about. I just need to change into something more comfortable. Tenten looked to his backpack, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. Not you too, Naruto. I know Guy-sensei says that it helps with training, but she didn't get to finish as he whipped out the green spandex jumpsuit and started grinning like a madman. How about a bet, Tinchan? If I can impress you while wearing this, you have to wear yours for training and eating ramen with me. If I don't, then I'll tell you why everyone hates me. He walked over to the kunoichi and held a hand out. Deal. Tintin decided this was a sure bet. Having worked with Guy Sensei and Li Kuin for so long, there was no way she could be impressed with that outfit. She took Naruto's hand. Deal. On the other side of Konoha, Konoha's sublime green beast of prey felt a warm tingle. Someone is donning a wondrous green jumpsuit. The taijutsu master was leaving his favorite non-training establishment, the Curry Cinema. It was a new addition to Konoha, a Bollywood cinema that doubled as a curry house. It combined his favorite meal with movies of sweeping emotion. Today's film was a special run of 3 idiots. Funsuk Wangdu is right. One should follow excellence, not success, as success will come if excellence is followed. I shall no longer aim to meet my goals. I shall surpass them. If I say I will do 1,000 laps of Konoha, I will aim to surpass it rather than stop when I reach it. He felt the fires of youth burning hotter than ever within his belly. As he moved to begin, he ran straight into a passerby. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I wasn't looking where I was go. He trailed off as the face of the man he hit came into view. His thin skin, his eyes squinting, almost closed. His brown hair still had its widow's peak, but while it was once shaved close, was now a long mullet. His sage green bomber jacket hung on his shoulders while he wore a sleeveless green jumpsuit. Sensei, Katanakaji Sensei, is it truly you? It's been a while, Boykoen. Hasn't in-game grown much since we last met? Katanakaji nodded to the sweating Jonin. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it. After taking a long puff and realizing his former student wasn't going to be in a state to talk for a time, he wrapped an arm around Guy and pulled him along with him. How about a bit of sightseeing? It's been a while since I have looked over Konoha from the Hokage Mountain. Asuma-sensei, can I talk to you about something? The Team 10 leader turned to Shikamaru and nodded. Questions of his own began to form in his own mind as he led his pupil to a bench. In the past few days, his normally lazy student had become obsessed with training. They had made great progress with Kakabashibari no Jutsu, and his stamina training was going at a good pace. What is troubling you, Shikamaru-kun? I have noticed a change in you. It's not unwelcome. I'm rather glad you've started taking training seriously. Shikamaru shifted uncomfortably. Asuma had never seen his student look so uncomfortable. I've started noticing someone. It's not something I expected. I find it bothersome. Asuma leaned forward, gesturing for him to continue. You know about my plan? A boring life followed by a marriage of convenience, a few kids, and an early retirement. This attraction would upset that plan, and they put forward an interesting point. Higher ranks can be more selective. If I'm an elite jonin, then chances are they would only use me for a few important missions. Less work, which works for me. What should I do? Asuma-sensei crossed his arms. His student had used person and they. Gender-neutral terms meant it was a boy. A change in attitude. Going from his research on the other teams means Uzumaki. He had seen the boy working at the medical center and had heard about his rapid growth. It all added up. Certainly, there weren't any gay couples at the time, but it was well known that the Nidaime Hokage had preferred the company of men but never married. It had been a long time ago, so perhaps it wasn't as well known as he thought. Perhaps Shikamaru was thinking about needing an heir for the Nara clan. Whatever the case, he really was too young to be dealing with such matters. Nara Shikamaru may be a genius genin, but he was still only 13. Shikamaru, you're 13. Sexuality is a difficult thing to discuss at any time in life, and it can take years for some people to know what they're looking for. You shouldn't try to stick to a label to yourself until you have some more experience. My advice is to wait. Spend some more time with Naruto, and if something happens, it happens. Shikamaru blinked. Asuma smiled at the fact he could catch his student. He then began to lament that they weren't playing shogi. He would definitely have one with his students so distracted. In the basement dojo of Tenten's home, the brunette had set up the room as Naruto had asked, level 10 Fuinjutsu exercise. Her father had helped her create an assault course that went through numerous levels. She had herself reached level 4 and had not yet mastered it. Level 10 was Jounin level, according to her father. Naruto stood waiting. Tintin moved back from the course. Are you sure about this, Naruto? Naruto nodded. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's go. At the Hokage's office, Hiruzen was staring out the window when a Chunin entered. Lord Hokage, Shimura Danzo has left Konoha. He left a letter saying he was going on a sabbatical, and he also left a message to put his financial resources on Uzumaki Naruto to win. The Hokage nodded and accepted the letters before sending the Chunin away. So, Orochimaru was going to be observing the Chunin exams. The Hokage mused to himself what Danzo had told him. In exchange for the power to combat and hold the nine-tailed fox within himself, the Warhawk of Konoha had made a deal with Hiruzen old pupil. The price was to not interfere in an attack on the village. From Danzo and Kakashi's reports, Hiruzen concluded that the Snake Sannin was looking for research materials and had something special planned for the young Uchiha. I will have to prepare then for my final battle with one who was once my most treasured pupil. Tintin didn't know what to say. The walls of the dojo were a mess. She had never seen such destruction. Naruto turned to her and grinned. I can only hold it for a short time, you know. I think 30 seconds to a minute, depending on what Fuinjutsu I'm dealing with, but you see what I mean? She looked at the orange genin and noticed something strange. Is it meant to affect your hair too? The boy looked confused, so she continued. Your hair is longer than it was when you started, and during your hair looked almost... She shook her head. Had to be her imagination. Something else. The way you moved was like... Naruto put his hands up. I know. I was surprised when I learned about a shared heritage. I don't think they remember, but I think it might be fun to remind them. Naruto moved to collect up all the weapons and repairing the damage, and Tintin joined him. I have a nine-tailed fox sealed in me. That's why everyone hates me. Tintin dropped the bundle of kunai she was holding. What? Naruto fiddled with the jumpsuit till he managed to peel the torso part down. She watched as his bare stomach slowly became decorated with a large seal on it. The Yondaime Hokage didn't kill the fox. He instead sealed him in a newborn baby. The Sandaime Hokage made it against the law or the adults to tell anyone, even me, about it. But people were seeing me as the fox that killed all their friends and comrades, instead of the boy that the fox was imprisoned in. Naruto felt himself getting pulled into a hug. What dash? Thank you for telling me. I know you didn't have to, and I understand why you'd be hesitant. They stayed that way for a while until Tintin pushed herself up. I've got another idea for a costume. We'll need to stop at a few shops, so we best get going now. With that, she took Naruto's hand and dragged him away with her, forgetting that he was wearing a jumpsuit and that he'd rolled it half down. On the Hokage Mountain, Madogai finally regained his capacity for conversation. You've been training Naruto-kun, haven't you? Katanakaji folded his arms. And what if I have? He had chosen to wear the outfit he had often worn during his days as a ninja for this purpose. Guy felt himself feeling nervous in the presence of his old sensei who had, if anything, had become even more muscular in his long retirement. He wasn't receiving training anywhere else. Guy choked at this. What? But his team leader is my eternal rival, Copy Ninja Kakashi. Surely he would be training his pupil in the run-up to his match against Niji-kun. Katanakaji shook his head, and Guy dropped to sit on a rock. I see. I had always thought Hitaki was so very cool and hip the way he acted, but now I see he just didn't really care. I'm afraid I have failed you, sensei. I have not chosen my rival well. I thought that a student of your eternal rival would be best suited, but it would appear that was a mistake. Katanakaji punched his former student hard. Fool! You have chosen a nemesis, not a rival. He is your opposite, and so you must overcome him. It is true that my rival was more of a friendly eternal rival, but that doesn't mean you have to do it the same as me. From what I hear, you have successfully created plans of attack specifically for fighting Sharingan. That is quite an achievement, boy Koen. Naruto came to my house and treated my daughter's injuries, so I offered to compensate him. Further, Yondaime listed my retirement as extended sick leave owing to bereavement and trauma. I am technically still listed as a Konoha Jonin and ANBU General. Therefore, I have broken no laws. I am relieved by your words, Sensei. I should tell you, Orochimaru is in the village, and we know he plans to invade soon, with help from Tsunagakure. You may want to prepare for a fight. Katanakaji smiled. I think I'll leave the fighting to Naruto. He is well on his way to surpassing his father. Chapter 6. Proud Failure. The Chunin exams are about to start. In the forests of Konoha, Niji had completed his final burst of training before the Chunin exams. All around him were broken and shattered blades, but for a perfect circle. Tintin gasped for breath, her body and her chakra resources exhausted. It's perfect, Niji. Niji didn't nod or acknowledge the comment. That's enough of a warm-up. Let's go. He didn't wait for her to agree or catch. He merely moved with a single-minded resolve that conflicted with his style. The Hyuga's Jukin used subtle, circular movements while Niji was direct and unyielding. The Hyuga prodigy began to consider his matches. Uzumaki would be an easy win. He had no talent or skill to speak of. After that, he would be facing either the last Uchiha or the red-haired ninja from Suna. Now that he had Master Hakusho Kaden, he knew it was superior to the Suna boy's sand, and he also knew Uchiha couldn't keep up with his speed. That left. Hey, Niji, gasped Tintin once she caught up. Niji turned his head slightly to listen to his teammate. Niji, do you remember that present your uncle left when you joined Team Guy? Niji returned to staring forward. Yes, he remembered. He threw it in the trash. Well, I kept it and I gave it to someone. I hope you don't mind. Niji didn't over a reply. He merely added distance between them. The Kunoichi Jin sighed and hoped she had made the right decision. Maitate sat in his office, staring at the report his apprentice/assistant/bane of his existence had left. Chakra stimulants harvested from plant life in the ruins of Uzumaki could be used for a number of maladies they had had trouble with recently, and with help from the Yamanaka clan, they should be able to cultivate it in their own village. He sighed. This treatment wouldn't completely heal Rock Lee, only improve the quality of life outside of being a ninja. The Irionines still couldn't believe how much work the Genin had done in such a short time, without even being made an official candidate for the medical program. He pulled out a blank scroll and began to write out his recommendation for a mission to the ruined city of Naruto's clan to retrieve the plant, wanting to get it filed before he went to see how his protege did in his fight with his patient's teammate. Sarutobi Hiruzen was visiting the memorial alone, offering prayers to the fallen and for those who would soon follow. A number of his best Jonin and ANBU were on missions far away from the village, and by Danzo's estimates, the combined Otogeikure and Tsunagakure forces outnumbered them 5-1. The only one of his students he was in contact with had disappeared with his student. He shook his head dismissively. He had seen Ms. Haruno the day after he had heard what had happened from Danzo. The Pinkette was wearing an outfit almost exactly the same as the one Tsunade had worn at that age. He had asked around. Sakura had researched Jiraiya at the library along with Tsunade, and then gone shopping. Clothes and perfume that had been Tsunade's preference. Everyone who knew Jiraiya knew his weakness for Tsunade, and the image of one from before their team fell apart probably tugged at his guilt over losing Orochimaru than his, as he'd refer to it, super pervert side. Shikamaru dodged another punch as he tried to focus, molding his chakra for the jutsu. Pushing himself to the limit at this late in the training period, he wasn't hoping for miracles. He only hoped he could at least master this jutsu before he had to get to the stadium. Sarutobi grinned as he pulled out his trench blades and made a wide swipe at his student's head. The shadow wielder barely ducked in time and kicked out, knocking a blade out of his sensei's left hand. Finally, he felt it, he saw the shape, and he saw his target, and he sent it out. The Sand siblings Temari and Kankuro were not at ease. In fact, they were downright terrified. For the past week, after he came back from disappearing in the middle of the day, their little brother Gaara had radiated bloodlust. Even Baki's presence, representing the Kazekage's authority, wasn't enough to quell the rage radiating from the host of Shikaku. All they heard him say was Uzumaki, Naruto. They couldn't figure out why he would say that name, though. They'd met the Uzumaki boy and seen him in battle. He was useless. After checking the time, Kankuro did some last-minute tweaking on his puppets, while Temari polished her fan. As the Sandaime Hokage finished his thoughts, he turned to see a man he'd not seen in over 10 years. The customized bomber jacket worn over his shoulders, the sleeveless green jumpsuit, and a long mullet. The student of his student. He smiled. Katanakaji, it has been a long time. His smile dropped when the often cheerful, often ridiculously so, man did not change his stern look. Katanakaji, the master weapons maker of Konohagakure, pulled a scroll out of his jacket. I have long abided by the wishes of the Council of Elders, and I have had a great deal of work to do while raising my daughter. My wife and I are set on this. You will rescind Jiraiya's claim on Naruto as godfather and bestow them on me. He handed the scroll over. Shikamaru greedily ate as he tried to restore his chakra after the intense training. One of Choji's pills and an early trip to a shop for numerous bags of crisps had nearly done it, but he was now ravenous from the evaporation of body fat. Asuma-sensei was still out for the count. The jutsu had worked. You're acting really weird, Shikamaru, crunched Choji between mouthfuls of crisps. I thought training was a bother, but now you're training a lot. Shikamaru chuckled. I had a thought, Choji. If I get to a high enough level, then I get to do as much or as little as I want. If I train and work hard now, it means I get to work less later. Choji nodded and continued eating, not convinced. Shikamaru sighed and concentrated on keeping the image of performing the jutsu in his head. This is where we first became a team, thought Naruto as he enjoyed a cup of instant ramen on the training ground where Kakashi had given them the bell test. The lesson of self-sacrifice and teamwork had been a good one, but given he'd been abandoned by his entire team, he had to wonder if they had been learning the same lesson. And Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to see Hinata, hiding slightly behind one of the wooden posts. Hinata-chan, are you all right now? The Hyuga girl blushed nervously, but moved away from the post to stand nearer to the blonde genin. And Naruto, what are you doing here? Isn't tea today the finals? She shifted from crossed arms to holding her arms behind her back as she waited for an answer. Naruto saw this and remembered the words she had used in her fight with Neji. Oh, so that's how it is. I'm just taking some time to think how far I've come since I became a genin. He set the finished cup down and turned back to focus on Hinata. Neji's your cousin, right? She nodded. He's strong, right? Another nod. I think something happened when he was younger, something to do with his dad dying, that's made him so angry. I'm going to find out. He nodded to Hinata and turned to leave. Naruto, wait. The blonde stopped and turned. When I fought him and why you cheered for me, I felt like I had become stronger. Even though I lost, I started to like myself more. Most people don't think I've changed, but I know now that I can change. I was able to tell people my Nindo that I learned from you. Thank you. Naruto blushed. Though he would never admit it, he had enjoyed being the kind of person who helped people find their way in life. Like when he had helped Konohamaru, and when he had helped Inari. Now Hinata. Hinata, after the exams, I'm going to play ninja with Konohamaru and his friends and help them with their homework. Would you like to join me? You're better at the written stuff than me, you know. Hinata turned a deep shade of red, so Naruto walked over to he and tapped her shoulder. I think you'd really enjoy it. Hinata nodded. As Naruto began to head off again, she called out to him again, Naruto, my cousin may be strong and may have never lost, but you have. Because you failed in the past, you have the strength to get back up. I think that's what true strength is. Neji is strong, but you are very strong. It's what I always liked about you and Naruto. Naruto smiled. Thanks, Hinata. I was feeling depressed over stuff, but now, after all you've said, I feel great, you know. Hinata felt pride swell in her. Not only had she managed to keep a conversation going with Naruto, she had made him feel better. You know, Hinata, about you. She moved closer to listen to him. I always thought you were a plain lewing, dark weirdo. Hinata felt herself crumple. And that's the kind of person I like best. I'm gonna go kick Neji's ass, so be sure to watch me. He left for the stadium and didn't notice that Hinata had frozen. Naruto looked around the stadium, looking for any sign of Sasuke. He couldn't believe Sasuke would be late for this. Could he have picked up on Kakashi's tardiness? Hey kid, eyes up front. Need to face your future customers. The new proctor chewing his sunbon, then turned to the people in the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause for our rising new stars. Kiba Inuzuka had resorted to prodding Hinata with a stick. Hinata, what the hell? We're going to miss Shino's fight. Chapter 7. The main event commences. As the people of Konoha began entering the stadium for the final part of the Chunin exam, the Sandaime Hokage again peered at the scroll that Katanakaji had given him at the memorial monument. It was the same scroll he had been handed 14 years ago when he had returned to office. Adoption. Katanakaji had entered the council room with his wife, the civilian Hana, and demanded that the son of Minato and Kushina be placed in his care. While the Hyuga and the Nara clan leaders backed the proposal, both had served with the everlasting Titan of the Hidden Leaf and knew he would be a good and watchful guardian. Others had not been so sure. Shimura Danzo had questioned letting the boy grow up among the civilians, and the head of the civilian population, Haruno Ken, had strongly opposed having the demon living near him and his daughter. In the end, they had turned down Katanakaji. He was no longer a ninja and could not be entrusted with guardianship of a child that liked Naruto. Now, though, Katanakaji had revealed he had never officially retired, merely on extended sick leave. Hiruzen took a long puff of his pipe. Naruto may well reach the position of Chunin on this day, and would be officially recognized as a man of Konoha. However, he was also barely into his teens, and had been without a family all his life. Perhaps giving Naruto this would be the right thing to do. Shikamaru watched the other genin arrive. He had managed to be early despite bottoming out his chakra reserves and then having to restore them earlier that day. He could see no sign of the Dosagai who he had to fight, who had beaten Choji. He saw his other opponent, though, the Suna Kunoichi Temari. That giant fan was gleaming from excellent care and showed no scratch from when it was used to crush Tenten. He saw her look at him and recognized the thoughtful look she gave him. She was sizing him up, analyzing. Could she be like me? He thought to himself. Could she be a tactical thinker who plans ahead a fight before it even starts? There had been a reason for his earliness. He had mapped out the battlefield, looked for weaknesses in the ground, and checked the size of the shadows. He just hoped his match was at the right time of day. Hyuga Niji, Jukin genius and member of the branch house of the Hyuga clan, stood proud in the center of the stadium, waiting for the finals to get underway. It looked like everyone had been training hard over the month, even the lazy Nara Shikamaru. He couldn't make up his mind with the future Nara clan leader. He often seemed to sleep through things, and yet when awake it was clear he had a keen intellect. He decided that he ought to keep an eye on him, to be sure. He continued his observations until he realized his opponent wasn't there. He turned to the entranceway and saw him, and immediately remembered what Tenten had said earlier about the present from Uncle Hayashi that he had thrown in the trash. Up in the seating area, Hyuga Hayashi gave a gasp at the sight of Naruto. Despite the obvious color change, he recognized the traditional Hyuga garb he had intended for Niji to wear. Kiba Inuzuka had resorted to prodding Hinata with a stick. Hinata, what the hell? We're going to miss Shino's fight. Hinata finally unfroze, and Kiba relaxed. What happened, Hinata-chan? Who was that blonde Hyuga you were talking to? Shikamaru stared agape at his transformed friend. Black hakama trousers with a light orange kimono orange. He wore a darker orange Matsuki Haori over it. The spiral that adorned so many ninja garbs in Konoha was emblazoned where the Mon, family crests, were supposed to be. His obi sash was black with what appeared to be spiraling orange foxtails decorating it. Naruto's Itaiate was tied onto the obi, leaving his forehead bare and showing the diamond that he had recently gained. He was no longer wearing the typical ninja sandals. He now had split-toed, white tabi socks, and Sita appeared to be two sticks tucked into the obi, but Shikamaru couldn't guess what they were. Something he recognized, though, was the Iryo-and-I coat, which the blonde genin was wearing on his shoulders. All in all, the dead last genin looked more. Naruto looked around the stadium, looking for any sign of Sasuke. He couldn't believe Sasuke would be late for this. Could he have picked up on Kakashi's tardiness? Hey kid, eyes up front. Need to face your future customers. The new proctor chewing his sunbon, then turned to the people in the stadium. Ladies and gentlemen, Let's give a round of applause for our rising new stars. Shinui Ginma, proctor for the final part of the exams, wasn't sure what to make of the blonde Jinin. He looked like a younger version of the Yondaime Hokage, wearing his confidence like his coat. He had seen the trainee Irionin at work when he'd visited a friend at the medical center. The kid had been everywhere at once, totally focused on task. It was unreal that a Jinin, who hadn't even finished his Chunin exams, was fast becoming an Irionin genius. The Hokage rose up and moved to the balcony while the Kazekage remained seated. Thanks everyone for coming to the Konoha Chunin selection exam. There was a great applause. We will now start the main matches. Shikamaru gave a sigh of relief. It seemed Dosu had quit the exam, so he no longer had an extra match to fight, which meant he just had. Baki, the leader of the Sand siblings on their invasion of Konoha Mission, glared at Gaara. There was no sign of Uchiha Sasuke, and there was Gaara's disappearance not long before they were due to arrive that day. Could he really have done this? After I repeatedly told him not to attract attention. Okay guys, it's a different setting, but the rules are the same as before. You fight until one of you dies or acknowledges defeat. I'll step in if I think the fight's over. You got that? The assembled Jinin all gave the slightest of nods. This was serious. No joking or questions now. All right, first match is Hyuga Neji vs Uzumaki Naruto. You two stay while the rest go to the waiting area. Hinata and Kiba were barely able to find a seat, but were able to see as Neji and Naruto stepped forward to face each other. Above them, Ino and Choji were sat staring intently at the arena floor. Against someone like Neji, Naruto has no chance, whispered the blonde florist while the pleasingly plump Jinin opened another bag of crisps. I don't know Ino-chan. Shikamaru has been different ever since he went for ramen with Naruto. Maybe Naruto is different too. I haven't seen him for a while, and he looks really serious down there. A Chunin with brown hair combed to cover his right eye, and another with spiky black hair started going over the odds. That blonde Jinin had a lot of luck, but that Hyuga kid. The other nodded. Indeed. That Hyuga kid is too tough for just luck to carry you through. My money's on Hyuga. Hyuga Hinata sat beside them, listened to the conversation, and fumed. Rising up, Hinata turned to them. You're wrong. Naruto is really strong. Stronger than you realize. She was shocked, as was Kiba. In the past, Hinata had never stood up for herself like that. Kiba then heard whining coming from his shoulder. What is it, Akamaru? He turned and saw a hooded ANBU standing not far from where they were seated. An ANBU? What's going on? As they stood staring at each other, waiting for the call to begin, Hyuga Neji spoke in a sneering tone. You look like you have something to say? The blonde raised his hand into a fist, and Neji was reminded of the last time they had looked upon each other. I told you before, you're definitely going down. Neji looked at his opponent and activated the Byakugan. Naruto watched him as he adopted a fighting stance. The eyes of a person who totally believes in himself. There's no doubt in him. Neji watched as Naruto adopted a similar stance and stared into the blonde's eyes. The eyes of a person who totally believes in himself. There's no doubt in him. Hyuga Hayashi turned to his daughter. You said you had a strange doctor when you went to the medical center yesterday. The young heir to the Hyuga main family nodded. That's him. He kept talking about some plant he was having brought here for a medicinal treatment he'd come up with. He was able to reset my leg and use Shosenjutsu. Not even a scar. He even did a cosmetic once-over of my older injuries, and Hayashi's face tensed. You want to know about our clan? He said it was for a history project. Sorry, father. Hayashi tensed for a moment, but decided it was unlikely that the blonde boy could know anything about. It's of no matter, Hanabi. I want you to watch your cousin carefully. There isn't another Hyuga like Neji. Hanabi nodded. Yes, father. Now the first fight. Begin. Chapter 8. Fight. Destiny and Guts clash. A Chunin with brown hair combed to cover his right eye, and another with spiky black hair started going over the odds. That blonde Jinin had a lot of luck, but that Hyuga kid. The other nodded. Indeed. That Hyuga kid is too tough for just luck to carry you through. My money's on Hyuga. Hyuga Hinata sat beside them, listened to the conversation, and fumed. Rising up, Hinata turned to them. You're wrong. Naruto is really strong. Stronger than you realize. She was shocked, but not as shocked when a hand tapped her shoulder. Thanks, Hina-chan. Boss down there will be glad to know that. The Kage Bunshin turned to the two Chunin. Hey, you feel like making a bet on this fight then? I win. You have to pay my tab at Ichiraka Ramen. The two Chunin turned to each other and whispered before turning to face the Kage Bunshin. What if we win? We don't have any debts, and no non-clan Jinin would have anywhere near enough money to give us a decent jackpot. The whiskered Irionin chuckled, and the two Chunin moved closer. If you win, I will set you up with a medical plan that will cut your fees by 60% while receiving ENBU-level treatment. He smirked at the dropped jaws of the two Chunin. ENBU could show up any day, any hour, and receive no questions medical treatment. And to receive that kind of access to medical treatment for only 40% of what they had to pay for Chunin-level cover. Deal. Hyuga Hayashi turned to his daughter. You said you had a strange doctor when you went to the medical center yesterday. The young heir to the Hyuga main family nodded. That's him. He kept talking about some plant he was having brought here for a medicinal treatment he'd come up with. He was able to reset my leg and use Shosenjutsu. Not even a scar. He even did a cosmetic once-over of my older injuries, and Hayashi's face tensed. You want to know about our clan? He said it was for a history project. Sorry, father. Hayashi tensed for a moment, but decided it was unlikely that the blonde boy could know anything about. It's of no matter, Hanabi. I want you to watch your cousin carefully. There isn't another Hyuga like Niji. Hanabi nodded. Yes, father. Now the first fight. Begin. Niji flinched from the absence of movement. He had expected the blonde Jinin to charge at him the second the proctor made the call. But instead, Naruto had begun to slowly move around, circling him. No, he was moving closer. Niji decided to move in a similar fashion. Though his steps were deliberate and spaced out, Naruto's steps were more like a shuffle. The young heir to the Hyuga main branch turned to her father. Father, is this all that Nijine is going to do? She couldn't fathom what was going on. The two Jinin had merely been circling one another for the past half hour. Hayashi tensed. It is a sound strategy. They are focusing all their energy on each other, looking for an opening. Normally, this would be a simple matter of waiting till one dropped their guard. However, if Niji-kun doesn't do something soon about that Uzumaki, it won't matter if his stamina is greater. Kafebunsin no Jutsu. Suddenly, four exact clones of Naruto appeared and surged towards Niji. The Hyuga prodigy paused at this. The Kage Bunshin was a Jonin-level Kenjutsu from the Forbidden Scroll that had been stolen 6 months ago. The Academy instructor Mizuki had been arrested for it, but it was said that he had manipulated a student to steal it for him. So, you're the moron who stole a scroll? Behind the 4 clones, the original Naruto started. Yes, I heard about it. So you try to become stronger like that, huh? It won't do any good, though. Your fate is already set in stone. Tenten blinked in surprise. Was this Naruto's idea of a trump card? The Kage Bunshin would make it difficult for Niji to find the original, but Niji was a Juken prodigy, with taijutsu skills beyond anything Naruto could learn in a month. She turned to her father. What is Naruto thinking? Katanakaji tensed. The Hyuga boy didn't see what was going on, and Naruto seemed in no hurry. Clearly, that move wasn't going to be his first plan, simply a reserve. He remembered the promises his slug prince had made to Tenten. He is preparing to show us all his new path, his new Nindo. Tenten looked confused, but returned to watch the match. The clones charged at once, weaving from different directions. The Hyuga didn't even move. The veins round his eyes just seemed to flex more. He leapt at the last moment and delivered a brutal kick to the face of one clone while landing in a handstand on another. He spun, and with an almighty crack the clone exploded just as the head appeared to leave the body, causing Naruto to wince and hold his neck as the memory invaded his mind. The last 2 clones were dispatched with a spin kick. Pathetic. To think you dream of being the Hokage. It's impossible for you to beat me with these all-seeing eyes. Talent is decided when we are born. Our destiny is decided before we are even born. You have nothing to distinguish yourself from the worthless losers you stand up for except a goofy grin. Your fate is to lose to me. Here. Damn Hyuga and double damn those all-seeing eyes, thought Naruto as the phantom pain in his neck burned. He knew his backup could finish this fight here and now, but he needed to know more. He needed to know why Neji felt such pain that he needed to hurt Hinachan the way he did. Why the hell do you get to decide things, huh? You think those eyes tell you everything you know? Growled the genin. Hyuga Neji sneered. So, you think any shinobi can become the Hokage just by working hard? Kage is a title few shinobi are awarded. Think of our villages, a man who built a forest on a whim, another who could locate any enemy just by touching the ground, a genius who commands the Monkey King, and a man who could be everywhere at once, who defeated the nine-tailed demon fox. At this, Naruto felt his tenant growl with contempt. Look at the reality around you. Only one destiny is shared by all that even a loser like you can achieve. Death. He still has that grudge against the main family? Why hasn't that boy activated his jutsu? What does he know about this situation? Hayashi couldn't understand what the Uzumaki boy was up to, but he was sure it couldn't be good. Another swarm of Kage Bunshin rushed at the Hyuga prodigy, 20 of them this time. Neji saw the one at the far back. The same strategy? What a fool. He rushed his way past the clones and pulled a kunai from one of them before leaping into the air to land right behind Naruto. It's over. The clones disappeared. Father, why is Naruto trying to use taijutsu? You were teaching him nintaijutsu on account of the lack of time. Katanakaji shook his head at his daughter's question. Initially, yes. However, I then discovered that Naruto had mastered the Kage Bunshin no jutsu and could divide his training up among many. I taught him a martial art that I thought would help him understand Juken tactics better. In fact, he read up on it and decided to adapt his Nindo to include its teachings. Tintin turned to her father. What martial art? Judo. Another swarm of Kage Bunshin rushed at the Hyuga prodigy, 20 of them this time. Neji saw the one at the far back. The same strategy? What a fool. He rushed his way past the clones and pulled a kunai from one of them before leaping into the air to land right behind Naruto. It's over. The clones disappeared. Neji drove the kunai forward but fell forward when the kunai was suddenly smoke. Two hands grabbed his arm. Suinage. Neji was suddenly in the air and then slamming into the ground. A trap. Neji rolled away from his opponent and tried to regroup, but the orange genin was on him straight away. Neji attempted a kick, but it was grabbed and Neji was swung by his own momentum into the air and then into the ground, face first. Held close together by the blonde genin, Neji struggled to break free. As long as we're this close, your all-seeing eye is pointless, and you don't have the room to try choking my chakra points. I can just keep throwing you into the ground until... He didn't get to finish as Neji fixed his footing and then brought his stare to Naruto, radiating with Saki. Hakusho. King. Chapter 9, Juken. The Flawless Gentle Fist. Another swarm of Kage Bunshin rushed at the Hyuga prodigy, 20 of them this time. Neji saw the one at the far back. The same strategy? What a fool. He rushed his way past the clones and pulled a kunai from one of them before leaping into the air to land right behind Naruto. It's over. The clones disappeared. Father, why is Naruto trying to use taijutsu? You were teaching him nintaijutsu on account of the lack of time. Katanakaji shook his head at his daughter's question. Initially, yes. However, I then discovered that Naruto had mastered the Kage Bunshin no jutsu and could divide his training up among many. I taught him a martial art that I thought would help him understand Juken tactics better. In fact, he read up on it and decided to adapt his Nindo to include its teachings. Tintin turned to her father. What martial art? Judo. Another swarm of Kage Bunshin rushed at the Hyuga prodigy, 20 of them this time. Neji saw the one at the far back. The same strategy? What a fool. He rushed his way past the clones and pulled a kunai from one of them before leaping into the air to land right behind Naruto. It's over. The clones disappeared. Niji drove the kunai forward but fell forward when the kunai was suddenly smoke. Two hands grabbed his arm. Suinage. Niji was suddenly in the air and then slamming into the ground. A trap. Niji rolled away from his opponent and tried to regroup, but the orange genin was on him straight away. Niji attempted a kick, but it was grabbed and Niji was swung by his own momentum into the air and then into the ground, face first. Held close together by the blonde genin, Niji struggled to break free. As long as we're this close, you're all seeing I is pointless, and you don't have the room to try choking my chakra points. I can just keep throwing you into the ground until... He didn't get to finish as Niji fixed his footing and then brought his stare to Naruto, radiating with Saki. Hakusho. Katen. Naruto couldn't hold his grip. It was as though Niji's skin was on fire. Niji span round and the fire began to surround him. Naruto pushed away, throwing stars appearing in his hands and flinging them to cover his retreat. The stars didn't pierce the armor and fell to the ground in a mass of shattered metal. Niji sneered at the 14-year-old genin. Did you think you had won with a couple of judo moves? Hayashi gave a start, just as Hinata was shocked into a hacking cough, and Hanabi leaned forward to watch the fight. They all shared the same thought. Hakusho Katen, the heavenly spin. While the Hyuga clan members were shocked, Niji's Kunoichi teammate was all too familiar with his mastery of the clan technique. They had trained together for a long time to perfect it. With the Byakugan's almost 360 degrees of vision and their natural ability to direct chakra out of every part of their body allowed Niji to use the ultimate protective and defensive jutsu. So there's another who has an absolute defense to rival my own, mused the red-haired Sunanin. Father, he can use your technique. Hanabi stated as they watched Naruto try to breach Niji's Katen only to be flung across the arena. Hayashi nodded. Katen is the Hyuga main families. A special technique only passed onto the heirs to the Hyuga house. For Niji to have mastered that technique by himself, without instruction, Hayashi went deep into thought, observing his brother's son. What a talent! To be this good. Naruto ran forward and prepared the hand gestures for Kage Bunshin. Niji began to spin again. A single clone appeared and ran forward. The clone leapt onto the beginning Katen, and before he was flung away and destroyed, Naruto leapt onto his back to gain height. He pulled out a scroll and raised a hand. A mass of weapons of every shape and size appeared, and all came crashing onto Niji. His barely formed Katen couldn't handle the onslaught, and the Hyuga prodigy fell away, rolling away from the blades and hammers. The tide of metal came to an end, and Niji looked up to find the blonde genin rushing him with a kunai in one hand and a hammer in another. In his confusion, he could not fully avoid the attack, as the blade pierced his arm and the hammer came on his forehead. Only his Hitai protected him from losing consciousness, though it did lead to the metal of the Hitai cutting him. Niji coughed up some blood before he started to sneer again. Not bad, but now you've entered the range of my hack, Rokujion Sho. He adopted a new stance as Naruto prepared for another attack. Hayashi Hyuga stood up in shock. That stance. Naruto's attack didn't land as Niji hit first. 2 strikes, 4 strikes, 8 strikes, 16 strikes, 32 strikes, 64 strikes. The blows were a blur as they landed all over the blonde genin's body. Finally, his boy exploded away from the Hyuga boy. Hinata and Kiba looked horrified. Kotetsu and Izumo started adding up the profit they stood to make on their new medical care program. Hanabi's Byakugan flexed as she focused on the attack's effect. The Sandaime Hokage gripped the arms of his chair, leaving dents in the wood. Tintin and Katanakaji looked at each other worriedly, trying to discern why Naruto had put himself in such a position. Hayashi watched the blonde gasping for breath on the arena ground, then looked to his nephew. What incredible talent, he thought, For the great Hyuga blood to flow so strongly in one who can never claim the title of heir to the clan. Exam Proctor Gunma, move closer to the battle. That should be about it. Niji walked over to Naruto. I have hit the 64 tenketsu of your body. You cannot stand, nor can you channel chakra. He watched while Naruto, still hunched and holding his torso, rolled onto his knees. Stay on your knees before a power you cannot defeat or change, and accept your worthlessness. Just as I have. Having your dreams come true through hard work is an illusion. Is it painful? Accepting your role in life. Hinata fell from her seat in a coughing fit. When Kiba knelt down to help her up, he found blood in her palm. She struggled to see across to where Naruto struggled to rise as her vision blackened. Do you all really think that I, the last of my clan, would be defeated by the boot boy of the clan that served mine? Naruto looked up as he set one foot down and then the other. He raised himself to full height to face his opponent, who was now backing away in shock. What? Niji tripped on a stone and fell on his rear. I am possible. What is he saying? How is he standing? I am an Uzumaki, the last of the clan who founded Uzumaki. Just as the Uchiha helped the Senju found Konohagakure, so too did the Hyuga help the Uzumaki found Uzumaki. Just as the Uchiha were Konoha's military police force, so too were the Hyuga the Uzumaki military police force. I am your lord, and if anyone is going to lose this fight, it shall be you. Naruto took a resolute stance as he stared down his enemy. Good. You'll get angry now. Now he will begin to tell me why he hates his own clan. Naruto pulled out the Tessen, swing, and swoop, and took a beginning position. Insao, I. Father, is that all true? What is he? Hanabi couldn't believe what she was seeing. With that command, a second chakra network had appeared. It mapped the entire body, just like a normal network. However, there appeared to be more wires that collected around his forehead and his stomach. She tried to look closer at the network. It was an eerie orange-red color. She looked closer, but fell back when it seemed to growl at her. What is he? Hayashi felt a cold sweat run down his neck. How had that boy learned about that? That information was only known by the oldest of clans, the Senju. When Uzumaki had fallen, the Hyugas petitioned the Sandaime Hokage for asylum. The In seal. The seal that had been used by the Shodai Hokage and his wife, the Lady Mito Uzumaki, to seal the nine-tailed fox within her. Somehow, that boy has learned of his maternal lineage and found a way to use the demon's chakra. I don't know, Anabi. I don't know. She was injured during the preliminaries. She said she was fine, but Kiba struggled to explain to the ANBU working on the unconscious Hyuga girl. He was panicking, feeling responsible for his teammates' condition. The ANBU gave a reassuring tilt of the head. The Irionin that treated her merely missed a minor injury that hasn't healed properly. Just a simple bit of emergency surgery. I can do it right now, actually, if you prefer. Kiba eyed his mysterious Samaritan. Just who are you? The ANBU turned to his work. No one suspicious, if that's what you're thinking. As your superior, I command you to answer my question. Naruto faced the Hyuga boy as he moved closer, still in an attack position. Why? Why did you mentally attack Hinata like that when she was trying so hard? The Hyuga charged and launched into Kaiten. Naruto swung his Tessen, and a great gust swamped Niji. His perfect sphere of chakra lost form, and he fell sprawling on the ground. Insulting Hinata, automatically deciding she was a loser. I don't care what the hell has happened with your clan, but people who call others losers like that are people I won't forgive. Niji pushed himself off the ground, picking stone out of cuts and grazes. Fine, I'll tell you. You've told me about a Hyuga past I didn't know about, so I'll tell you about their present that you don't know about. I'll tell you about the Hyuga clan's destiny of hatred. Chapter 10, Gemini Shadow. An intruder in the Hyuga estate. As your superior, I command you to answer my question. Naruto faced the Hyuga boy as he moved closer, still in an attack position. Why? Why did you mentally attack Hinata like that when she was trying so hard? The Hyuga charged and launched into Kaiten. Naruto swung his Tessen, and a great gust swamped Niji. His perfect sphere of chakra lost form, and he fell sprawling on the ground, insulting Hinata, automatically deciding she was a loser. I don't care what the hell has happened with your clan, but people who call others losers like that are people I won't forgive. Niji pushed himself off the ground, picking stone out of cuts and grazes. Fine, I'll tell you. You've told me about a Hyuga past I didn't know about, so I'll tell you about their present that you don't know about. I'll tell you about the Hyuga clan's destiny of hatred. Hayashi's eyes gave the barest flicker of emotion on his normally stern face. Not even his daughter noticed this. Hayashi moved closer to listen, wanting to know what was wrong with his nephew. It was truly as he thought. Kiba didn't notice anything of this, as he was too busy watching the ANBU focusing before thrusting his hand upon Hinata's chest. Kiba was at a loss. His teammate had lost consciousness, and he was scared. The ANBU looked up. Don't worry, I'm a doctor. The main family of the Hyuga clan has a special ninjutsu that's been passed down for as long as any of us can remember. It's a Juinjutsu. A Juinjutsu? Questioned Naruto. Niji nodded. That's barbaric. The Uzumaki clan scrolls state that in Uzushiobikure, any and all Juinjutsu were labeled Kenjutsu. The teaching and use of Juinjutsu was punishable with expulsion. Naruto felt rage boil in him. Niji's family used Juinjutsu on him. What one? And why? What a village that you speak of. But this is Konohagakure, and no such measures exist. The mark of the Hyuga Soke no Juinjutsu represents a bird in a cage. It is the symbol of being tied down to an inescapable destiny. The Hyuga Genin reached behind his head and undid the knot of his hitayate. He let it drop from his head to reveal a large black mark that covered his entire forehead. It looked like a manji with hooks on either side of it. Naruto looked at the mark with a look of disbelief. That mark is... The Sandaime Hokage watched the fight with a grave expression. I can't believe that a clan in my village conducted themselves like this. How could I have been so blind? All of the main house either were the hitayate around their neck or a clothing decoration or not at all, while the branch house have worn them on their forehead without fail. It was so obvious, yet Tenten looked to be in great pain as she watched this. The two opponents facing each other were both people she had a bond with, and she didn't know who she should be supporting. They both had a reason to fight that she understood, and she wanted them both to win, and yet... In the past month, she had felt a bond form when she and Naruto had been together. Not the bond that so many of her fellow kunoichi wanted to form with Uchiha Sasuke Yuck. No, her bond with Naruto was more like the bond she had with her parents. And yet she also had a bond with her teammate. She finally knew why her teammate had always seemed to carry so much pain in him. Had he told her, she might well have taken the information to her father. She could picture him laying siege to the Hyuga estate and squeezing Hayashi's neck till his head exploded. Probably just as well that didn't happen. Thought she did notice a fire of anger ignite in her father's eyes when Niji revealed the Juinjutsu. Hyuga Hayashi closed his eyes as a wave of shame filled him. Hisashi, I have failed you and that boy. I recognize you now. Not as Uzumaki, though. I recognize that chakra network and those eyes from last week. The little sneak thief. When I was 4, on the day of Lady Hinata's birthday, the Hyuga Soke no Juinjutsu was carved into my forehead. But most have remembered that day as the day a shinobi leader from Kumobikure, a village that Konohagakure had been in conflict with, came to the village. While I screamed in agony, being branded as an inferior specimen of the clan, the village was in celebration over the alliance treaty that was to take place. While everyone celebrated, one clan was absent. The Hyuga clan, from child to Genin to Chunin to Jonin, even the ANBU. All Hyuga clan members were in the clan estate for Lady Hinata's 3rd birthday, because that's when we brand the branch members. The Hyuga heir's birthday present is a mass branding of the inferior stock. Niji reactivated his Byakugan. He watched as the orange-red chakra surged and hit against the Tenketsu spots he had blocked. It seemed to flow harder at one spot until the damage was undone and moved to the next. So that diamond was a seal. He must have set up that seal with his secondary chakra network specifically for fighting Hyuga. He should be able to just fight with that network, but he wants to talk while he fixes himself. Maybe his chakra control for that network isn't as good. Niji maneuvered himself closer to his opponent. My father was there as well. Hyuga Hizashi. Lady Hinata's father, Hyuga Hayashi, and my father, Hyuga Hizashi, were twin brothers. But Hayashi was the firstborn and became a member of the main family, while my father, the secondborn, became a member of the branch family. Hyuga Niji shook his head in derision. When the Hyuga clan's first daughter became 3, I was made a bird in a cage through their Juinja as a member of the branch house of the clan. And with this Juinjutsu, in place a member of the main house, Kin. Niji thought back to that time, years ago, when he saw his uncle put his own brother through so much pain he passed out, with just a flick of a wrist. Never forget your duty. His father's words echo in his mind. But why? This seal can, with a secret hand seal, destroy the wearer's mind. It only disappears when they die, and it seals the ability of the Byakugan with it. There are many who would go to any length to get their hands on the Hyuga Kekkei Genkai. So, with this Juinjutsu, the branch house is allowed to live only to protect the main house. Any form of disobedience is prohibited by the main house, an advanced system created to eternally protect the Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. Niji surged forward and launched his hack, but his arms suddenly jarred. Naruto had folded his Tezsun and pincered his arm. Naruto applied more pressure and pulled Niji forward. He then delivered an uppercut to Niji's face. The double chakra network running through the orange genin at the time increased the power of the blow and fired him over 30 feet across the arena. Naruto tucked the Tezsun back into the obi sash and walked over to Niji. It couldn't be that simple. A hatred of his clan based on a Juinjutsu? Understandable, but Niji was a genius genin. He could resent his position, but that shouldn't make him so full of hatred that he would nearly kill Hinata in a Chunin preliminary match. That Hinata didn't use the Juinjutsu should have told him something. You're an idiot, Niji-san. Do you hate Hina-chan just because you got branded on her birthday? That she, whose abilities pale in comparison to yours, will get to order you around? Do you not think it's strange that a main house member couldn't just use that cage on you? He knelt down and whispered into Niji's ear as the Hyuga stood up. It's not that she wouldn't, she can't. The Hyuga elders are planning to have her demoted to the branch house. Now that they have Hanabi, a prodigy like you, they don't need a bumbling idiot like Hinata. Niji looked at the blonde in shock and pushed away. How? How would you know about something like that? Naruto smirked and flicked his arms. Twin tornadoes appeared and Niji rolled away. He turned and Naruto was stood directly in front of him. I'm the Gemini shadow you Hyuga have been talking about. The two chakra networks flexed as one, and like a cannon, Naruto's fist drove into Niji's gut. In the week leading up to the Chunin exams finals, a strange phenomenon had been observed by many Hyuga on the Hyuga estate. A small shinobi completely covered in black had been seen on the grounds, specifically the Hyuga library. When they had tried to see his chakra to figure out who it was, they had been baffled by the fact the individual had 2 chakra networks circulating his body, and he was stronger, faster than an ordinary shinobi of his size. They hadn't brought it to the Hokage because they feared the double chakra network may have represented a flaw, a weakness developing in the all-seeing eye of the Hyuga. Niji coughed and wheezed as he pushed his aching body. His opponent was not what he had expected. The dead last loser that had vowed to beat him was now some sort of urban legend on the Hyuga estate, capable of eluding shinobi whose job is to see through shadows. And then came the day that tainted my life and showed me the terrible thing that is destiny. The day my father was killed by the main house. Naruto gasped. Yes, one night, years ago, Lady Hinata was taken by an intruder. Lord Hayashi took care of it. The intruder was all in black and his face was covered. Can you guess who it was? Naruto shook his head and Hayashi's face became even sterner. It was the Kumogakure shinobi leader who had just signed the peace treaty. Obviously, the whole reason for the treaty was so that they could get close enough to steal a Hyuga with the Byakugan. But Kumogakure, with one of their leaders dead, on Kanahagakure soil, by Kanahagakure hands, saw an opportunity. They threatened Konoha with war till they made a single demand. One thing, and there would be no war. They wanted the body of a Hyuga ninja with the Byakugan. They wanted the corpse of Lord Hayashi. And Kanahagakure agreed. Hanabi turned round and saw her father sink back into his seat with a weary expression. But father is alive and here. What happened then? The Sandaime Hokage sighed and fell back into his chair. The Hyuga clan are playing host to a great deal of drama right now, and I always thought they were a bunch of stiff shirts. He turned to the Kazekage and fixed him with a glare. Normally, I'd have to repeatedly tell him that I did not share his taste for testing the next generation with surprise assassination attempts. He's been almost completely silent. Could it be that he is... War was averted by killing my father and sending him in place of a main house member. Niji began to laugh. To escape this horrid fate in this damnable cage, the only escape is death. They were twins, identical. Their strength, virtually the same. Born first, born second. Their destinies were decided by just that. Do you understand, Naruto? Your fate was decided the moment I became your opponent. No Fuinjutsu from your forgotten clan or Iryo Ninjutsu from the medical center can change your fate. Naruto raised his fist, and in a twirl, Senbon appeared. Now, I know the cause of your darkness. I can now treat it. Hyuga Niji, prepare yourself for a lesson in Naruto-style Iryo Nindo. Chapter 11, Iryo Nindo, the Path of a Healer. First, put your Hitai-8 back on. Naruto pointed at it on the ground. Niji looked at his opponent confusedly. He saw the orange chakra fade and the diamond reappear on Naruto's forehead as the blonde genin walked over and picked up the black headband. What are you talking about? Niji asked Naruto as the blonde genin stood before him, holding the Hitai-8 out to him. I tell you are destined to be defeated by me, and you are concerned about wearing a headband? He pushed it back. Naruto pushed it back and onto Niji's chest. By wearing these, we recognize each other as fellow shinobi, as rivals in this exam, striving to prove our worth in front of our allies, our comrades, and people we don't know, people who couldn't give a rat's ass about whether we live or die. Sometimes, the only person that might care is an enemy. Niji swung his arms out and launched into his Kaiten. Naruto leapt into the air, riding the chakra and still holding the Hitai-8. In his other hand, he pulled out the Tenzin called Swoop and concentrated on the Kaiten. In a swing, he dipped Swoop into the Kaiten and pulled the Kaiten apart like a ball of yarn. Niji faltered and tried to move away, but stopped when he saw that Naruto was still too far away to hit him with the Tenzin. Naruto swung out, and to Niji's amazement, the Hyuga genius felt that his chest tear open. A long, cruel gash appeared out of nowhere, going from the left of his waist to his right shoulder. Inen, the Sunateam leader Baki choked on his dango. Kase no Jaiba, or rather a derivative of it. Like Temari's Kamaitashi no Jutsu, the orange genin had channeled it through his Tenzin. However, the boy hadn't flung the attack, nor was it a flurry of kunai made of wind as Temari would have described it. No, it was like his technique, a single sharp cut that bypasses virtually any defense. The boy must have concentrated his wind chakra into the fan and used it as an invisible extension, increasing the range and lethality of what would have been a simple melee attack. This boy, channeling chakra into attacks without hand signs, Nintai Jutsu and Ninkin Jutsu. Such a fighting style would complement an Iryonin well, Baki thought. Inen, I can't imagine how it must have hurt to have lost your father at that age. But to think that destiny is all decided because of that is a huge mistake. Naruto charged close and locked one of Niji's arms in a hold while he swung a leg out to knock the Hyuga off balance. As Niji slipped, Naruto lifted and brought his opponent down to the ground with a slam, not giving Niji a chance to recover. He put the Hyuga prodigy into a submission hold. Niji struggled and winced, preparing to feel the dirt and stone rub into his wound. But it didn't come. While still struggling, he was able to see his cut close up and form a long scar. Finally, the hold relents, and he rolls out of it, but not far as his Itate appears in front of him. Put it on. Niji stares at his opponent. Shosen Jutsu? You heal my cut, but why? Why have you healed me? Why do you use a civilian martial art? What were you talking about earlier when you said sometimes the only person that might care is an enemy? What? Naruto stood up and watched as Niji picked up the Hittite and stand. Ju-yoku go osaisu. Gentleness controls hardness. I follow the principles of judo. I couldn't get you to listen to me by shouting at you, so I used Shosen Jutsu to make you take pause. Kano Jigoro originally created a bujitsu, but he eventually realized that the principles he created with it, Ju-yoku osaisu and Suryoka Zenyo, maximum efficiency, minimum effort, could be combined with Jita Kaiwai, mutual welfare and benefit, to form a Budo. The concept of judo is this. In short, resisting a more powerful opponent will result in your defeat, whilst adjusting to and evading your opponent's attack will cause him to lose his balance, his power will be reduced, and you will defeat him. This can apply whatever the relative values of power, thus making it possible for weaker opponents to beat significantly stronger ones. This is the theory of Ju-yoku go osaisu, a civilian version of your clan fighting style that you have been floored by. The reason I learned it was to understand your clan. However, the only one who seems to have taken the philosophy of your Jukin seriously is Hina-chan. I told you about respect for an enemy, because look around. Niji scanned his surroundings. Can you name any of those civilians? Did you ever play with civilian kids? No? Do you know why? Because they fear us. We are trained, almost from birth, to fight and kill in the defense of our village and for pay. We can do things that no ordinary civilian is capable of. They don't understand us, and so they avoid us. They don't respect us. I wear my Hittite, and my opponent knows I am a shinobi of Konohagakure. If I die, they can say I killed Uzumaki Naruto of Konohagakure, not some shinobi. Niji placed his thumbs on his jacket, and after a moment of concentration, 2 holes appeared. He looped the holes with his Hittite and fastened it back up with it. You're hopeless. In a flash, he charged into Naruto. Before Naruto could react, Niji had channeled as much chakra he could in his fist and drove it straight into the orange Genin's chest. The chakra released and flooded Naruto's body. Blood erupted from his mouth and drenched the Hyuga prodigy's face. Immediately, the Hyuga clan's genius Genin launched what appeared to be Hack Rokujian Sho, followed by a chakra-enhanced kick. Naruto flew across the arena, and as he did, his body exploded with blood. Cuts appeared all over his body. Niji began to laugh maniacally as the blonde Genin landed with a wet thud. What did you think of that? I saw that second circuit and realized what you were doing. To make sure that doesn't work this time, I gave you my special attack that I reserve only for the most undeserving of ninja. Rokujushi, Setsudan hack, 8 trigrams, 64 amputations. Not only did I hit your Tenketsu, I severed them. With that, he turned to Genma, who looked visibly shaken. Proctor, it's over. Ina-sen. Hayashi turned to see his daughter on her knees, throwing up. Hanabi. He moved to her side, and within seconds was holding her as she dry heaved. What is it, Hanabi? Hanabi began to sob uncontrollably. Did you not see it, father? When those blows hit, I could see the chakra lines. It was like they were bleeding. And now, it's like he's invisible unless I turn off the Byakugan. Father, I'm scared. She pushed herself further into her father's embrace while he rubbed her back and stroked her hair in a vain attempt to comfort her. Hayashi looked at the scene and felt bile rise in his throat too. Such a brutal assault, even more so than his attack on Hinata from the reports. He thought to himself, what is he thinking, executing a fellow Konoha Genin like this? Hayashi felt shame overcome his disgust. Hizashi, your son. Ina-sen. Hijitsuma Shidama. The monotone voice called out. Instantly, a swarm of Kikaichu started to swarm Nara Shikamaru as he tried to run out onto the arena. It didn't cover him entirely, but the bugs had managed to secure the young Nara's hands and feet as Aburame Shino slowly walked over and pulled him back to his seat. When Shino felt Shikamaru had calmed down, he recalled the Kakache back into himself. You cannot interfere. It is against the rules to enter another shinobi or kunoichi's match. Why are you acting like this? I am listening. Shikamaru rubbed his wrists and turned to the bug using Jinin. I've just seen a friend, a comrade in arms on pranking missions, and recently a role model for self-improvement, get cut open by a guy who beat his own cousin half to death. I can't just sit here and do nothing. Shikamaru huffed and stood up, finding himself uncomfortable while sitting next to a guy with bugs living inside him. I can sympathize with your feelings of loss. As you said, Uzumaki's opponent beat Hyuga Hinata half to death. At this, Shikamaru noticed Shino's sunglasses slip to reveal eyes quivering in anger. The bug using Jinin quickly pushed them back. While I never took part in pranking, Hyuga was my teammate, and so I feel the loss you feel in the sense of losing a comrade in arms. But the rules are very clear, and no matter how you or I feel, we cannot hope to continue in the exam or claim the title of Chunin if we do not obey the rules of the Chunin exam finals. You will have to wait until you have defeated the Suna, Kunoichi, and myself before you can get your revenge. Shikamaru sighed. If the Aburame was willing to break his pattern of monosyllabic sentences, then he could bide his time. Ina-sen. Naruto woke to the sound of a flute playing. It was a strangely relaxing tune that made his aches and pains fade. He eventually noticed he was in a pool of water. He sat upright and looked around. It was that power plant in him that the fox was sealed in. The sound was coming from. The music stopped. You're awake then? Good. I would hate to think you'd get to just die unconscious while I have to watch it all come down. What in the world were you thinking? I was trying to wait. I am dying. And when did you start playing the flute? I've been playing since before you were born, and yes, we're dying. That Hyuga boy you were trying to save punched a shitload of chakra into your heart and caused heart failure. He then sliced you open at your Tenketsu points, so if it isn't blood loss, then it's chakra shut down on account of irrevocable damage to your chakra network. Even if you were able to release the Ein seal, your second network wouldn't get past the damage, and you'd fry your brain with all the chakra we've stored. Lastly, he put another shitload of chakra into a finisher, a kick to the gut, right into the seal. My seal is now totally warped that I couldn't escape even if I possessed you and got you to pull off the seal paper on this cage. Would it help? The fox turned to the genin. Would you be more comfortable if I removed that seal paper? The fox was flabbergasted. Boy, I just told you we're dying and you want to make me comfortable? Well, yeah, you played the flute for me till I woke up, and if there's no way for us to survive this, I can at least make you comfortable. All this was said with a sincere smile that the fox hadn't seen in a long time. How long do you think we have? The fox rose up. Kurama. Naruto ran over to the cage and climbed up the bars to look the fox in the eyes. What was that? It's like you said Naruto. Everyone should have a name. How can we acknowledge each other if we don't know each other's names? I can't very well say, thank you, fox, or thank you, Ninetales, you know. The demon fox, known to many as Kyubi, wasn't sure he could control himself at this point. He began to growl. You seem to be angry a lot, you know? Maybe if we could be friends, you wouldn't have to be so angry all the time, you know. The fox collected himself and tried to sound as tough as possible. How about this, brat? I'll send chakra to your new seal, and you can do whatever you like with it. If I am impressed, then I will give you my name. Naruto grinned. Deal. And so your name is? Yes. Now say it. Kurama. At that, the whole room shook and shivered. Naruto reached out and ripped the seal paper away, and the whole room fell away and became a formless white. Well, what the? Where are we? I gave you my name, Naruto. We are now joined. The white room changed again, and suddenly they were in Konoha, at the Hokage mountain. The fox explained. We're currently in your mind space while I move us to the Ein seal. I'm afraid that seal on your belly will be visible at all time now. It's utterly warped, and I doubt even a master Uzumaki could fix. Naruto, what is that? Kurama signaled to the addition to the Hokage mountain in Naruto's mind space. Beside the other Hokages were two heads, close together and looking regal. The face on the left was obviously Naruto. The hair was slightly longer, but the face was smiling the same grin it always had when Naruto was truly happy. The other face was, well, when I become Hokage, it's not like I'm going to lie about who I am. And since we're a team, I thought, the Jinchukuri Hokage of Konoha should have his partner up there with him, Kurama. The nine-tailed demon fox, Kyubi. With a sweep of one of his tails, he could cause tsunamis to crash and storms to rage. He was the embodiment of natural disasters. Kurama had only cried twice in the thousands of years he had lived, the day his father died. And now, Inen-sen, so are we dead? Naruto dug into a tub of ramen that had appeared in front of him and turned to Kurama, who had dug into a ramen box the size of Ichiraka ramen. They looked out as the sun set on the Konoha in Naruto's mind. No, right now, we're in an infinite second. While we have been fixing our inner workings, virtually no time has passed outside. You're still on the floor bleeding and suffering heart failure. Kurama set down his chopsticks and rolled onto his back, scrabbling to get an itch that had been bothering him. But we've sorted out your seal, cannibalized the remains to strengthen the Een seal, and bonded. What do you think the odds are I'd still be able to fight? Kurama rolled back onto his belly. Slim if you wake up, and then try to release the Een seal. Your wrists are in no condition to move. You'll have to use our bonded chakra to get it going and activate the Een seal after to take care of the rest. You just have to call my name. All right, let's finish this. And Kurama. Yes, Naruto. Can you teach me to play the flute? Inen-sen. Shiranui Genma moved over to the bleeding husk of the boy that he had seen working in the medical center only days ago. He had been a total pro, and Shiranui had believed the boy would help put Konoha on the map for its medical capabilities, just like back in the day when Tsunade lived in Konoha. He turned to the audience and saw Izumo and Kotetsu loudly arguing about how Naruto had cheated them out of their winnings. Inen-sen. Katanakaji felt a rage that threatened to overwhelm him. Before, when a teammate had died in his arms, he had felt despair. Today, he did not feel despair at the sight of the boy he wanted to help dead on the ground. Today, he wanted to tear the Hyuga estate apart. He wanted to put Hyuga Niji's head on a pike, then tear the Council of Elders apart, limb by limb. His daughter Tenten felt much the same way. She knew the second Niji had stood up that Naruto had healed Niji. This Nindo philosophy Naruto had mentioned seemed to mean Naruto wanted to reach Niji before beating him. Niji had replied to this kindness by killing him. She didn't think she could be around her teammate anymore. She decided she would ask for a transfer after the exams. Then again, maybe she could just retire from the ninja life. Naruto, I'm sorry I asked you to help my damn team. I'm so sorry. Inen-sen. Genma knelt down beside the blood-soaked Genin. The beige Irionin coat was no longer beige, and he doubted there was enough cleaner in the village that would get all of the blood out. Sorry, kid. He raised his arm up and shouted. Winner of the first round. And he was cut off by a hand grabbing his arm. Kurama. Genma was swamped in chakra and leapt away before he was carried away. Naruto stood up, and Genma saw his and slid it like an animal. Like a fox. Yin-sel. Aye. The diamond on his forehead disappeared again, and orange-red lines spun and intertwined across his face and down his neck. The jacket, the haori, the kimono, all thrown off and making a soggy pile. The orange-red lines flowed across the bare skin, and Genma saw a black spiral on the boy's stomach before he turned and backed as far away as possible. This match was far from over, and he did not want to get hit by anything This immortal was throwing. Fuinjutsu. Moko. Aye. The ground erupted. Chapter 12. The finale. Kurama and Naruto versus Niji and Destiny. Proctor, it's over. Niji Hyuga stood and stared at the sum of his rage. People are born burdened with a destiny they cannot oppose, he thought. Father wanted me to live. He wished I had been born in the main house. But this mark, he said he wanted to understand me. But how could he understand to live with a mark that curses his existence? His destiny is to be defeated, to never ascend higher than the rank of Genin. He turned around and see that Naruto wasn't moving. What's this? Niji took a step toward Naruto. Setsudan isn't supposed to do that. It severs the main chakra networks, the arteries and veins. The smaller networks should still be intact. He should be getting up and realizing he can't mold chakra like Lee. He feels a shot of pain in his hand and sees blood seeping through the bandages. Chakra damage. I punched his chest before for my hand to be bleeding like this, the amount of chakra that would need to have been in my hand. Proctor Shunigama turned to the Genin with a look of fear. I believe that that Genin is having a heart attack. He needs immediate medical attention. Genma walked over to the bleeding mess that had been a remarkable new addition to the medical team of the Konoha Medical Center. Was there a quaver in that kid's voice? Looks like for all his talk, Hyuga isn't ready for that side of being a shinobi. Genma knelt down beside the blood-soaked Genin. The beige Irionin coat was no longer beige, and he doubted there was enough cleaner in the village that would get all of the blood out. Sorry, kid. He raised his arm up and shouted. Winner of the first round. Niji saw the look on the proctor's face, and he heard the whisper before he raised his arm. Naruto was dead. He tried to rise above what destiny had in store for him, and I killed him for it. Isn't that what I'm doing here? Niji is brought out of his thoughts when the proctor's declaration is cut off abruptly. He turns and sees Naruto standing up. He's alive. He hears Naruto scream out a name. Kurama? What's that? He looks again with the Byakugan. That chakra. It's yellow now. Did he have a third network? All this time? No, he's just released his Een seal, and it's the same. I really did sever his other chakra networks. What did he just say? Fuinjutsu. Moko. Inen. On Mount Mayaboku, the legendary toad, Sanin known as Jiraiya, was running. Running from the aggressive and unrelenting pursuit of a large toad that bore him a great deal of ill will. Gamabunta swung down his sword in a vicious downward arc. Jiraiya rolled to the side and felt blade graze against his hand. Jiraiya had a fairly good idea as to why Gamabunta was angry, and the reason was just 2 words, Hirano Sakura. 2 weeks after the preliminary exams had finished, Jiraiya had decided to take his new apprentice on a trip to the home of the Toad Sages. Her chakra level was incredibly low, so he decided that teaching her to channel and control nature chakra would give her more power. They went to the area that the training oil was made. The oil made it easier to absorb nature chakra, but evaporate if one ever tried to take it away from the mountain. He had asked her to strip down so he could oil her up. Instead, she jumped into the pool and hadn't been seen since. It had not gone down well with the great toad sage. Inen. Fuinjutsu. Moko. The ground of the arena shook like an earthquake. Chakra came alight and drew a large spiral into the ground. And then it exploded. The Uzumaki clan's deadly seal, Moko. Onslaught. Hayashi watched as a mass of weapons burst from the ground. Kunai, ninja stars, tashibishi, all sorts of bladed tools came from the ground and circled the yellow-eyed shinobi. The caster remotely controls a virtually infinite amount of unsealed weapons that return to the original seal when broken. In the Shinobi Wars, we Hyuga would protect the Uzumakis while they created the seal. You finally activated the seal Uzumaki. Are you planning to end this fight now? Inen. Naruto raised his arm, and the weapons surged towards the Hyuga prodigy. What is this technique? He activated the Kaiten. The blade shattered and disappeared. What? My Kaiten is taking up more chakra than usual. Those blades are eating my chakra. With that, the Hyuga prodigy canceled the technique and ran. He kept low and activated the Byakugan. By using the almost 360-degree vision of the all-seeing white eyes, he kept his eyes on Naruto's arm movements to predict the movement of the blades. What do I have left? He searched his pouch. 13 throwing stars, 20 kunai, and 15 exploding tags. I can work with this. He threw the stars at Naruto. The swirling mass of blades created a barrier and then returned to attacking Niji. The Hyuga prodigy threw kunai onto the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now Ki. The 10 kunai exploded, breaking up the mass and putting space between it and him. He ran for Naruto, kunai in hand. The blades failed to return to the seal and fell to the ground. A confused look graced the blonde Genin's face. Surprised? I infused my stars with my own chakra before I threw them at you. They weren't supposed to hit you. They were to disrupt the chakra that was controlling the attack. Naruto only had a few dozen blades left. Niji swung his hand back and threw the kunai with all his might. As it drew close, Niji gave the command. "Aye!" The kunai exploded and propelled the blonde across the arena. He lay on the floor, gasping as Niji moved closer. Suddenly, Naruto burst into a puff of smoke. A Kage Bunshin? He spun to where Naruto had been standing. The blades were all on the ground, in a circle. And within that circle, a hole. The ground shook beneath him. It cracked and sank, and finally a fist punched through, and kept going until it landed square on Niji's jaw. Niji shot up into the air. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A 3 clones appeared and leapt up into the air. They delivered hard kicks to send him higher and higher up. U, Tsu, Ma, Ki. The last Naruto appeared above him and delivered a powerful rotating heel drop, then kanonied into Niji's stomach. Naruto Rindan. Niji landed with a hard thud into the ground. He coughed and tried to push himself up. Why you cough? How could you understand what it is like to be burdened with a symbol you could never be rid of? Naruto walked over to him and pulled him up onto his knees. Up close, Niji saw the areas he had cut were healed over, the blood still dripping from nails that had dug their way through rock and earth. He saw the yellow eyes with slitted pupils, like an animal's. He saw a strange black spiral on Naruto's stomach. Runic triangles circled it, making it look like a black sun. Some of the triangles seemed to stretch out and upwards, like the pattern had been pulled and stretched out of shape. Is that a... Yes, Niji, I do know what it's like. And unlike you, I had no family around to offer me anything. Unlike you, who only imagined resentment from the main house, I had real resentment from everyone. Only Iruka-sensei strove to understand me and acknowledge my existence. Hinata fought on, while bleeding inside, tried to change herself. To change the lot in her life, the life of a daughter of the main house who was ignored and treated like a nuisance. She has suffered just as much as you, Niji. And I have suffered too. But it's no reason to hate everyone. Look at what you have done so far. You're fighting the odds, destiny, just as much as Hinata and I. Niji flinched in surprise. Why do you fight so hard against destiny? Niji was at a loss. Could it possible that Hinata is like me? And Naruto? Because I was called a loser. That's why I fight, why I'll never give in, why I'll win, why I'll become the Hokage and chief medic of Konoha. And it's why I'll change the Hyuga. Ina-sen. Kiba watched color return to Hinata's face, and he sighed in relief. Don't scare me like that again, Hina-chan. He turned to the ANBU. You could do it all, huh? Suddenly, the ANBU's hand thrust out and hit the Inuzuka's chest. I'm afraid you'll have to miss the rest of the tournament, puppy. Can't have you mentioning me, can I? Ina-sen. Niji pushed himself off of Naruto and threw a kunai. You're lying. You can't change fate. You can't. Naruto stood and dodged the kunai, and as more came, he didn't move except to dodge out of the way. Niji ran out of tools to throw, and Naruto stepped forward. His eyes shifted back to their sky blue, and the diamond returned. He formed a hand seal, his eyes locked on Niji. Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, Sokuwaku no Hokyu. The mark on Naruto's stomach seemed to struggle to move, but stuttered. The black sun's tail spread out further across Naruto's stomach and up to his chest. His spiky hair grew longer and longer until gravity pulled the hair down. His hair became orange, then red, like the color had been poured into his hair. He continued to walk to Niji, who was rooted to the spot. He started to flinch with every step and chuckled at Niji's look of confusion. I can't hold this form for very long, but I'll show you I can change fate. He reached out and laid his hand on Niji's forehead. To Niji's surprise, Naruto then thrust his hand forward. He grabbed hold and pulled. Just don't try showing off for a few days, all right? With that, he pulled his hand away, and a great pain tore its way through Niji's mind. Naruto fell back, gasping for air. Gah. Niji stared at what Naruto and gasped. He fell to his knees with a look of utter wonderment. That's Ina-san. Hayashi stared at the gasping Uzumaki, whose hair was changing back to its usual blonde color. Did he really? Hanabi stared at her cousin and tried to describe the look on his face. Relief? Fear? Confusion? Ina-san. Niji fell to his knees. Proctor, I forfeit. Naruto has won. The proctor cleared his throat and made the announcement, and the arena was swarmed with Irionin rushing to provide the two genin with medical attention. After some preliminary work and minor healing, they were escorted off of the arena. Ina-san. Shikamaru felt his whole body relax. He's alive. He's alive. He didn't understand how, but that didn't matter. The ever-unpredictable dead last shinobi had defeated the genius. He looked at the schedule of fights. Gaara was due to fight the absent Sasuke, then Shino and the Tsunagai with the face paint. His fight with the Kunoichi was last. He got up and went to follow the Irionin. Ina-san. Temari and Kankuro were worried. When the blonde genin called out, Kurama, Gaara had started convulsing, cradling his head and muttering. He had stopped shaking, and his hands were now tightly grasping his knees, like he wasn't sure what to do with his hands or himself. Temari looked up to where Baki-sensei was watching them. He looked as concerned as they were. Ina-san. Niji wakes up to find himself in a recovery room. He sees a tree outside a nearby window with a bird singing on it. Ugh, my head is killing me. Wait, my head. He rushes off the bed to find the nearest mirror but swoons and lands on the floor. I did say don't do anything fancy, birdie. Niji looked up to see a grinning whiskered boy looking at him. Hey, did you see what my hair looked like back then? Niji didn't know what else to do except nod. Yeah, it got long and red. Birdie. Naruto seemed to grin even more. Really? Red sounds so awesome. It'd be nice if it could stay like that. He pulled his now long hair into a ponytail. Right now my hair looks like a blonde version of damn pervy Sage. He didn't really seem that bothered by it. So Niji decided to continue his search for a mirror. Suddenly a large handheld one appeared, like one of the mirrors barbers have. Here, said the blonde genin as he held it for Niji. Niji raised it to his face. Same chin, same mouth, same nose, eyes, and there was the absence of a mark. It wasn't there, nor any hint that it had ever been there, just a cut from when the metal of the Hittite had cut into him. The bird in the window stopped singing and flew away. I'm free. He really did it. Uzumaki-sama, about the Setsudan. I never meant for it to dash. The door to the room opened. In the doorway stood the head of the Hyuga family, Hyuga Hayashi. Uzumaki-sama, Niji-kun, I congratulate you both on a hard-fought match. The people of Konoha are still applauding your performance. Uzumaki-sama. He turned to Naruto with a bow. When the exams are over and you have recovered, we shall discuss your position in the Hyuga family and your future role in our affairs. He turned towards his nephew and went down on his knees and bowed his head. Naikon, insensibili e Portuguese. I have failed you, and I have dishonored the memory of your father, my brother. Niji sat back on his bed and tried to regain his composure. You see, on that day that your father died, I fully intended to die. Whatever composure the young Hyuga prodigy had regained from his uncle's apology went out the window as he began to sputter. What are you talking about? My father was killed to take your place. The results may appear that way, but it is not the truth. Hayashi was stood again, and he looked upon his nephew with a sincere look that Niji found hard to argue with. The level of hurt he could see in his uncle's eyes also added weight to the statement. One of the elders of the main house brought your father into the meeting. He told Izashi had already agreed to the plan, but I couldn't send my own brother to. In the end, your father. Niji looked at his uncle and motioned for him to continue. He floored me. Hayashi noted the look of surprise on Niji's face. He said he wasn't doing it for the main house, who he resented. He was doing it for his brother. He told me you had seen the ugly side of his face and that mission to Kyumo in my place was the first time he really got the chance to choose. Hayashi paused for a moment. He asked me to tell you that he was not being killed to protect the main house. He said that to protect his son, his brother, and his whole village, he was choosing death with his own will. He said he wanted to disobey a Hyuga elder just once, and that he wanted to choose his own destiny just once. I want to wait until you were a little older, but please believe me, Niji-kun, and accept my apology. He looked up from a bow to see tears welling up in his nephew's eyes. Ina-sen. Later, Naruto had left to get a change of clothes when there was a knock at the door. Niji was looking out the window. It's not locked. He didn't turn to face the door till he remembered that Naruto had forbidden him from using the Byakugan for at least the next 24 hours, or he'd be at risk of a brain hemorrhage, among other things. He turned to meet his visitor. Naha Shikamaru. I'm not sure is the reason for the visit, but he was cut off by a lack of air and what felt like a hand on his throat. Kahikubi Sivari no Hutsu. The brown-haired genin stated simply. I could hold you like this till you couldn't breathe, and longer, so let me make this clear. If you hurt Uzumaki Naruto again, I will kill you. Simple as that. Understand. Niji nodded, and Shikamaru let him go, just so that we understand each other. Shikamaru left the room, and Niji took a deep breath of free air. Naruto has some powerful friends, it seems. Mused Naruto as he read his chart. That on another note, I've received a couple of comments saying they like the idea, but don't like Slash. A pretty crappy comment, but then someone actually tried to put forward some thought into that critique. So I've decided to ask readers this. Would you like a headish version published alongside Slug Prince? I say headish because it would be 2 guys and a girl. I have my own preferences on the matter, but I'd like to hear from you. I would essentially just tweak certain details about the story so that while Naru has 2 guys in his bed here, in the other, he has one of each. I want to continue using the 3-way relationship dynamic, and it would be a lot simpler to change just one of the partners. So would you like that? Would you want to keep Shika or Niji? And as for the lady, suggestions? Hinata? Tsunade? An OC? Let me know. Chapter 13, Absent. When are you going to show up, Sasuke? Clothes were delivered to the recovery room for Niji. Naruto quickly realized there wasn't a change of clothes coming for him, so he used his Oiroke no Jutsu technique to take on a clothed, feminine form. Niji watched Naruto leave, musing that she would make a fine bride. Naruto smirked at Niji's first attempt at humor as he left. Ina-sen. At his apartment, Naruto activated his Kage Bunshin no Jutsu to complete the 2 tasks he saw before him. Tidy the place and decide on an outfit. His kimono and hakama had been taken somewhere for cleaning and repair, and it had been the only set he had of that design. As the 5 cleaning Narutos moved to the kitchen, the other 5 clones were trying different outfits while the original made a delivery order to Ichiraku Ramen. One of the clones walked out wearing a mesh shirt and shorts with a belt of pouches and one of his medical coats. He was put in the mind of the crazy proctor from the 4th stage, Mitarashi Anko. Naruto immediately said no. Another time, maybe, but not today. Another came out wearing his original outfit, but when the clone tried to display some of their new moves, it proved tearing. He wondered what was taking Sasuke so long to arrive. Ina-sen. Not now. I can't die yet. His thoughts yelled at him. Uchiha Sasuke was buried in sand and rubble. He began to exhale as he shuffled. Before it had come crashing down, the young Uchiha had taken a deep breath and expanded his body as much as he could. Doing so meant that in this terrible moment of entrapment, he had created extra space for wriggling out. It was still a tight squeeze. As he struggled to dig his way out, he remembered a time with Naruto, not long after the mission to Nami no Kuni. Ina-sen. The heir to the Uchiha clan stood with a bemused look as he watched his teammate tear into the earth with his bare hands. What are you doing, dope? That's hardly ninja training. He sighed and watched a crow flying overhead, its large black wings causing a great shadow across the training ground. When he turned back, he coughed in surprise. The dope had managed to dig 6 feet into the ground. Stupid team. You gotta be prepared for anything you know. The voice seemed muffled until a hand burst through the ground, roughly 12 feet from where Naruto had begun digging. Soon, the blonde's head squeezed its way out, and he wore a daft, satisfied grin on his face. In that mission, we were trapped in mist, and all kinds of stuff happened, you know? A couple of years ago, I was walking past a building site, and some of the earth shifted. I ended up falling in, and I was trapped. I was woken by a mole biting at my ear, and I forced my body to tuck in and then claw at it. Sasuke looked at the blonde's hands. The fingers were bleeding at the nails, but at the same time the nails were slightly pointed. From then on, I practiced digging as a way of escape, and sneaking, you know. How do you think I've been able to hide from ANBU and Jonin M? Naruto himself up to sit on the edge of the new hole and grinned. Inen, Uchiha concentrated on holding his breath and remembered Naruto's advice. Don't hold your breath too long, or you'll be gasp and run out of air. Talk slow breaths and keep your heart rate down. Concentrate on your goal and push through. He thought about killing his brother, of avenging his clan. But as that happened, he began thinking about how Naruto had acted in Nami. How he had wanted to understand Zabuza and that kid with the ice mirrors. Was that what he wanted? Why did you decide to kill your clan Itachi? Is that what I want? To understand? He kept pushing through the earth and considered his next steps to restoring his clan's honor. He thought of the Mangekyo and its power. Suddenly, he saw the grinning face of Naruto. To achieve the Mangekyo Sharingan, one had to kill their best friend. His limited experience in interpersonal relationships told him that was Naruto. Naruto had grown up without a family much like him, and they spent a great deal of their time together, training and competing with one another. He felt close to Naruto. The boy could smile and joke despite his crappy childhood in a way that Sasuke hadn't. And he would kill him to obtain the power to defeat Itachi. Just like his brother. That's a disturbing thought. He wants me to meet him with eyes like him, but how can I want to be like a person like him? Sasuke felt rage boil within him and the mark on his shoulder burned, trying to break through the seal Kakashi had put on him. He dug harder, almost swiping the earth like it was an enemy. Finally, light burned his eyes, and he took a big lungful of air. Naruto, thank you for the lesson. Uzumaki sensei. Inen. As he stood in the mirror, Naruto tried to decide if it was the right look for him. Orange three-quarter-length trousers tucked into dark orange shin guards, and his tool pouch worn to the front instead of the back. A long-sleeve mesh shirt with a shoulder holster holding his tessen, and his hite was fastened across his chest by it. He was wearing black sandals and another of his customized Irionin coats. This coat was a bit more special than the previous coat. He had a number of seals built into the inside of the coat that could release stored wind chakra to control a fall or give him a speed boost. Or it could release stored lightning chakra as a trap or to add more oomph to an attack. Perfect. Inen. As he walked down the corridor to the recovery room, Naruto saw Shikamaru entering the recovery room he and Neji had shared. Thinking that the Nara boy had come to see how he was, he ran the rest of the way and went to open the door when he heard choking. I could hold you like this till you couldn't breathe, and longer, so let me make this clear. If you hurt Uzumaki Naruto again, I will kill you. Simple as that. Understand. Naruto couldn't tell what Neji's response was, but he heard someone gasp for air, so he assumed Shikamaru had stopped. Just so that we understand each other. The door started to open, so the blonde genin grabbed his report from the basket next to the door and buried his face in it while putting distance between himself and the door. Shikamaru left the room, headed back to the arena area. Naruto has some powerful friends, it seems. Mused Naruto as he read his chart. Did I just refer to myself in the third person? Naruto is concerned. Inen. The Kazekage turned to the Sandaime Hokage and gestured at the still raucous crowd. They're quite restless, aren't they? He said with a slight laugh in his voice. Hiruzen nodded. It was quite the match, wasn't it? The Kazekage shook his head. No, Sandaime. I think you'll find it has more to do with the next match. For the other Kages and respected Jonins in the audience, I doubt there is a match they'd enjoy more. The board was showing that the next fight to come was Sabaka no Gaara and Uchiha Sasuke. The Kazekage looked around. By the way, where is he? A jonin with a large scar across his face appeared and whispered into the Hokage's ears. Nothing could be heard by anyone else. In a sen, across the arena, people were yelling out for the battles to begin. Shikamaru and Naruto had returned and were watching from a balcony. The young Nara turned to the blonde. Do you know what the deal is, Naruto? Is Uchiha not going to show? Before Naruto could answer the two, Genin heard scuttling and turned to find Aburame Shino standing behind them. The bug user pushed his sunglasses back up his nose. Confucius once said, "The wise do not approach the dangerous." Could Uchiha have made a wise decision, perhaps? Naruto saw Gaara not far from him. He noticed that the redhead's eyes became darker when they mentioned Sasuke. Could that guy have interfered with Sasuke's ability to enter? He smiled and puffed his chest up as he faced the two Konoha Genin. What are you talking about? Sasuke is definitely going to be here. Inen, channeling his self-made technique, the Chidori, Kakashi punched his way out of the earth. He turned to see his student, the last Uchiha, claw his way out of the landslide that the Suna Genin had left them in. He was happy with the boy's development. His speed and reflexes were close to Guy's pupil, though this was achieved with chakra rather than strict physical training. And by teaching him the Chidori, Kakashi believed he had provided a preferable alternative to the curse mark. As he listened out for watchers or enemies, the Kopinin heard the boy rasp something that made his blood run cold. Thank you for the lesson, Uzumaki-sensei. Sasuke-kun doesn't use honorifics. In the time we have worked together, that brat hasn't even referred to my position. What could Uzumaki-kun have taught Sasuke-kun? Inen, Kankuro gripped the railing and felt worry building within him. The match with the Uchiha was part of the invasion plan, and without him, he turned to the red-haired ninja that he feared above all others. Could he have done this? He knows how important this is. Could he have really just completely ignored the mission, just so he could kill? He looked over at their team leader, and he could tell that Baki-sensei was thinking the same thing. Baki took a look across to the other side of the stadium and saw that the Kazekage had fully turned to face the Sandaime. Focusing all of his attention like that, he must be looking for some answers or some way to play for time. Damn that snake Orochimaru. His desire for that Uchiha boy for his experiments may well be the downfall of this invasion. Smoke appeared on the arena floor, and two figures walked out of the haze. Finally, wait. Who are they? Inen. In the deep blackness of oblivion, a girl all in pink swam unconsciously through the nothingness. Time was as nothing as the pink female appeared to either not care or not understand where she was. Suddenly, a jolt pulled from her blank state, and color appeared in her vision again. She saw bubbling yellow in front of her, and it burned. She closed her eyes again tightly and tried to return to the nothingness, but a voice screamed at her. Shinaro, what the hell were you thinking, you fool? Stop ignoring this and do something. Sakura recognized the voice as much like her own and a figure almost exactly like her, but lacking in color, a black and white imitation. Uchineru Sakura. Though her parents were civilians and their parents, the young Kunoichi of Konoha could only deduce that she had some ancestor who was a ninja with a Kekkei Genkai of some sort. Uchineru Sakura voiced her innermost thoughts and egged her on in certain endeavors. Her biggest piece of evidence, though, was from her fight with Ino Pig. Uchineru Sakura had pushed her out of her mind when she had tried to take possession of Sakura's body. Now, while she had shut herself away from the pain of drowning in the Toad Sage's oil, Uchineru Sakura had taken over the body in her absence. No, before she had shut her eyes again, she had seen her arm, and it was black and white-like. Yeah, I changed form, and now you need to take over. We're at the bottom, so if you walk us to a wall in your form, we can swap places and allow each of our bodies to recover. The oil is forcing nature chakra into us, so we can use that to... She was cut off by a hand around her throat. Baka, I have a better idea. Your way we leave none the worse off, except my unwanted tenant can take over when she pleases. Instead, I think I'll wear your skin for my escape and store the new chakra inside me instead of you. I'll replace your sorry ass for chakra reserves greater than that senile pervert up there. Reopening her eyes, She checked that Uchi Narusakura's skin was still covering her own. She started to half-wade, half-walk through the oil until she reached the side. Then, using Kakashi's training, she started to walk up the side. The monochromatic skin started to crack and peel. Sakura felt the burn but kept going. In her mind, she heard Uchi Naru Sakura whimper in pain, her throat having become too raw to continue screaming. Don't be like that. Look at the positives. I will still be alive, and with your sacrifice I'll be stronger than ever, and Sasuke-kun will have to notice me. Ina-sen. Jiraiya collapsed in front of the oil fountain, his body exhausted from weeks of running. As Gamabunta leapt into the clearing and moved in for the kill, he mused that it was a funny little circle of fate and that he should meet his end in the mountains where he had learned he would apprentice the savior. The fountain exploded just as the giant toad's sword came down. Jiraiya looked up to see a stone toad, the size of a man and wearing a red cheapao dress, blocking the sword. The stone toad leapt forward and landed a kick on Gamabunta's face. The large toad was sent an incredible distance into the air. The stone toad landed and started forming a series of hand seals he didn't recognize. Doton, Otamahakushi no Dangan. As the stone toad pushed their hands out, holes opened in the palms, and a mass of tadpoles made of stone burst forth and drove straight into Gamabunta, sending him further and further away. The stone tad turned and walked over to the toad Sannin and knelt down next to him. How was that, sensei? SS Sakura-chan. Ina-sen. In the center of the arena stood the toad Sannin with his apprentice. Sakura was wearing a pink sleeveless kimono-style blouse with a red obi sash and red three-quarter-length trousers. Along with this, she was wearing Geta sandals like her sensei's. They walked over to the steps and found some seats, ignoring the stares and questioning until finally the crowds returned to demanding that the next fight get underway. Sakura began to look agitated. Where's Sasuke-kun? Ina-sen. The scarred ninja appeared next to Gunma the proctor, and after a small conversation, the proctor stepped forward and raised his voice to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, due to an unforeseen delay in the arrival of one of the combatants, we are going to move on to the next battle. All around the stadium, Gunma noticed mixed reactions. Some looked pleased that something was coming while others looked put out. Likely some are just here to see how the last Uchiha performs. Bunch of pompous money grabbers. He cleared his throat and returned to the announcement. Aburame Shino vs. Sabaku no Kankuro. Will the combatants please come on down? Ina-sen. Shoot. Kankuro looked out at the arena floor and then at the puppet strapped to his back. My match doesn't really matter. That shady guy looks easy enough, but after what he did the other guy he faced, I don't want to risk damaging Karasu so soon before the invasion. Damn, I don't like backing out an easy fight like this. He raised his hand into the air and shouted down to the proctor. I forfeit. On the other side of the stadium, Naruto and Shikamaru watched as Shino's clothes rustled with activity and the noise of clicking and screeching could be heard. Both were put in mind of a beehive after poking it with a stick. They couldn't read Shino very well, but if they could hazard a guess, they were both in agreement that Aburame Shino looked like he was ready to blow a gasket. Ina-sen, we need to play for time. If the plan is to wait till this Uchiha kid shows up, then I better make this look good. Temari unhooked her war fan, and with a great swing, she surrounded herself with a great gust of wind. As it settled, she disappeared, only to jump out of the tornado that had started right next to the proctor. She walked out and waited for her opponent to come down. Ina-sen, good luck, Shikamaru. You better make it to the next round. He gave a big grin as his Nara made his way down to the arena without any prompting. My Nara? When did Shika become my Nara? Naruto scrunched his face in thought as he considered the day they had ramen and the way Shika had blushed after Naruto had thrown Gaara out the window. Then he remembered what he had heard earlier. Shikamaru had threatened to kill Neji if he ever hurt Naruto. I've never heard Shika sound so serious before. It was like he considered Naruto to be a special person like Haku had described his reason for serving Zabuza. Does Shika think of me as his special person? He seems so different right now, like he wants to prove himself. He didn't even complain about facing off with a girl, either. Innocent. Hey, hurry up and get on with this crappy fight. There were other shouts that followed, basically the same theme being hurled out as Shikamaru made his way down the steps and onto the arena floor. He sighed. Everyone is so eager to see Uchiha fight. They're probably annoyed that after that long-ass intermission, they're being forced to watch a pathetic excuse of a match between two side acts. Wouldn't you say, Proctor? Gema could only nod, agreeing with the pineapple-headed Jinin summation of current events. The blonde Kunoichi, on the other hand, wasn't quite so agreeable. You bastard. Don't stick me with the same label as you. She rushed forward and leapt into the air, swinging her war fan in a huge, viscous arc. A huge gust surged towards Shikamaru, who ducked out of the way to avoid being hit. Two more gusts came from opposite directions, and as Shikamaru tried to decipher a way out of it, Zankahan, another blast from another direction, struck the gust and dispelled them. The Proctor and the two Genin turned toward the approaching figure. The figure was holding a strange pipe in his left hand, and as he approached, he lifted his voice. Sorry I'm late, but I was meeting a teammate whilst he was convalescing and lost track of time. Innocent. Up in the stands, Gaara showed a rare display of emotion. Salt. Team leader Baki was also shocked as he looked at the approaching figure. Gaara, I thought you. Innocent. Kinyuta Dosu, reporting for duty. Chapter 14, Alive. The melody continues. On the night of a full moon in Kanahagakure, during the month allotted for training before the final round of the Chunin exams, the youngest child of the Kazekage of Sunagakure sat on the roof of a tall and elegant building. He stared up at the bright orb in the night sky and felt Shikaku's blood lust rise up within him. He had chosen the roof because it separated him from the rest. He knew he would have killed the one who claimed the title of team leader and the two who called themselves his siblings if he had been near them on that night. A night when Shikaku's blood lust could overpower his self-control. He started to wonder what sleep felt like when he sensed the approach of another. The figure's face was almost completely covered in bandages, and he wore a hitei that indicated him as one of Orochimaru's ninja. He couldn't remember his name, only that he had been the one who beat the roly-poly blob Genin. A mistake on your part, Snakeling. Shikaku is hungry, and you're here. You sure got me. Kinyuta Dosu, leader of Otoge-kyure's premier Genin squad, Team Dosu, called out to the Suna Genin. I guess you really don't sleep. That's a shame for you, then. I was going to get you quiet-like while you slept. Now we'll have to fight. Right here, right now. And my chances of facing the Uchiha boy will get ever higher. He pulled his sleeve back to reveal the melody arm. I know about your sand armor, Sunakuen. How about we see how it holds up against my Kayamaizen? Dosu was sure of himself. He had made it to the final round. He was the team leader, and he was the smart. The sound from his melody arm could make it through whatever thickness the sand could offer and rattle the bones of the boy inside. He had tools, kunai, throwing stars, and exploding tags. If push came to shove, then he always had. Is he laughing? That Suna freak is actually laughing. Gaara stood and looked down at the Otonin. Foolish. He gets thirsty during the full moon. Gaara's eyes closed, and everything seemed to disappear into blackness. For a moment, he felt calm, relaxed. Is this what sleep feels like? He wondered. It didn't last. Soon his body was surrounded in pain. He felt like he was being eaten by millions and billions of little ants. Shikaku was devouring him again, just like every other time he had tried to sleep or let Shikaku take over. He pulled himself out of his rest and forced his eyes to open, to wake up. He woke to see 3 hideous rips across the roof, like a gigantic animal had scratched into it. In the midst of this was a blood-stained corpse. Shikaku has fed then. With that, he turned away and left, having no further interest in the sight. Innocent. On a separate rooftop, Kinyuta Dosu watched the red-haired ninja leave. He turned his attention back to stitching the cut across his chest. He knew it was more luck than skill that had saved him. The straw raincoat he wore was a rare artifact from Kusagakure that he had taken for himself during a mission. The Wara Shroud allowed him to manipulate straw for a number of uses. In this case, he had created a straw dummy and had it filled with a number of blood packs that he kept for just such an occasion. The dummy didn't move, talk, or attack like a Kagebunshin could, but it didn't disappear after either. With this, the higher-ups would think he was dead. This gave him the perfect chance undercover reconnaissance. Orochimaru set us up. My team were going to be lambs to the slaughter for his experiments with the Uchiha. Way it is now, I have 3 options. 1. Finish the mission I was given and kill Uchiha. 2. Let everyone think I'm dead and run. 3. Kill Orochimaru-sensei. If I kill Uchiha, Orochimaru will either kill me or reward me. My money's on kill. If I run, Kin and Zaku will be killed since they probably still think Orochimaru was only testing us. Killing Orochimaru-sensei probably has the best payout, but if I can't beat that Sunabrat, then what chance do I have against my own sensei? His thoughts are disturbed when he realizes he's not alone on the roof. He sees an old man covered in bandages. That was an impressive move there, Odo-nin. Kinyuta Dosu, said Shimura Danzo. Perhaps we could go downstairs for some tea, and we can talk about village allegiances. Ina-sen. Dosu watched the first fight of the final round from a concealed spot, deciding to keep his distance from the red-headed Sunanin. He was dismayed by the Uchiha brat's non-attendance, but that was another matter. For now, he decided to map out the battle capabilities of his future opponents. Uzumaki was clearly a master of his stealth, indicated by how cleanly, quickly, and quietly he had tunneled through the ground. Dosu knew servants of Orochimaru who could turn into giant moles that were messier. He was also an intuitive fighter with ridiculously efficient regenerative powers and a gruesome long-range attack. That guy will have to fight Uchiha or Gaara before getting to me. I should be safe then. As for my side of the exams, that Aburame guy is someone I want to keep my distance from after what he did to Zaku. The Nara seemed unmotivated in his fight with Kin, but he's obviously capable and powerful. He's probably more of a tactician than a fighter, like me. Given the time, by the time we get to our fight, most of the arena will be shadow, and I'll have nowhere to run. Then there's Gaara's brother and sister. She seems reliant on her fan, a long-range fighter with a wind nature. Zankaha should dispel any wind attacks. Then I should get close and separate her from the fan. The guy is a puppet user, and doubtless he's able to use it for a lot more things than simple substitution. Probably holding back. Still, the puppet's made of hollow wood, and sound can still break it, or try to get past it and hit the puppet master. He watched as a scarred ninja that Danzo-sensei had identified as Namishi Rado appeared next to the proctor, and after a small conversation, the proctor stepped forward and raised his voice to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, due to an unforeseen delay in the arrival of one of the combatants, we are going to move on to the next battle. Dosu squinted his eye in annoyance. He had hoped to see his once target in combat again, but it seemed he had either run off or been taken care of prior to the match. But for it to be delayed rather than disqualify Uchiha, likely there were some higher-ups with deep pockets that wanted Uchiha to fight whenever he got here to see how the last Uchiha performs. The proctor wasn't finished. Aburame Shino vs. Sabaku no Kankuro. Will the combatants please come on down? Ina-sen. Shoot. Kankuro looked out at the arena floor and then at the puppet strapped to his back. My match doesn't really matter. That shady guy looks easy enough, but after what he did the other guy he faced, I don't want to risk damaging Karasu so soon before the invasion. Damn, I don't like backing out an easy fight like this. He raised his hand into the air and shouted down to the proctor. I forfeit. In another side of the stadium, Kinyuta Dosu watched as the Aburame Genin's clothes rustled with activity and the noise of clicking and screeching could be heard, like a beehive that had just been poked with a stick. Dosu remembered once when Kin had used her Senbon to knock a beehive on one of the Sound Five's heads. It was the 8-limbed Kidamaru, if you remember correctly. It was hilarious until the spidery ninja started eating the bees. He couldn't read the Aburame from such a distance, but at a guess, he was almost certain that Aburame Shino looked like he was ready to blow a gasket. Ina-sen, we need to play for time. If the plan is to wait till this Uchiha kid shows up, then I better make this look good. Temari unhooked her war fan, and with a great swing, she surrounded herself with a great gust of wind. As it settled, she disappeared, only to jump out of the tornado that had started right next to the proctor. She walked out and waited for her opponent to come down. A powerful gust that masks high-speed movement, making it look like teleportation. Rather flashy, really not very in keeping with the image she was presenting. She's playing for time, surmised Dosu. They must be waiting for Uchiha to show up before they attack. And yet for the puppet user to forfeit, to conceal his full capabilities. They're waiting for Uchiha to show up. He shifted his weight and considered his next step, entering the public view. Obviously, I could just drop down now and begin with Nara, but then I'll have to face the Sunanin. If I wait for them to start, then I have a chance of seeing her in action, but I could risk disqualification. Ina-sen, hey, hurry up and get on with this crappy fight. There were other shouts that followed, basically the same theme being hurled out as Shikamaru made his way down the steps and onto the arena floor. He sighed. Everyone is so eager to see Uchiha fight. They're probably annoyed that after that long-ass intermission, they're being forced to watch a pathetic excuse of a match between two side acts. Wouldn't you say, Proctor? Gema could only nod, agreeing with the pineapple-headed genin summation of current events. From his hidden spot, Dosu also nodded in agreement. As he did so, he saw the blonde Kunoichi rush forward, and a third option for this fight came to him. You bastard! Don't stick me with the same label as you. She leapt into the air, swinging her war fan in a huge, viscous arc. A huge gust surged toward Shikamaru, who ducked out of the way to avoid being hit. Two more gusts came from opposite directions, and as Shikamaru tried to decipher a way out of it. Zankahan, another blast from another direction, struck the gust and dispelled them. The proctor and the two genin turned toward the approaching figure. The figure was holding a strange pipe in his left hand, and as he approached, he lifted his voice. Sorry I'm late, but I was meeting a teammate whilst he was convalescing and lost track of time. Ina-sen. Up in the stands, Gaara showed a rare display of emotion. Salt. Team leader Baki was also shocked as he looked at the approaching figure. Gaara, I thought you. Ina-sen. Kinyuta Dosu, reporting for duty. He stood at full height. His hunching would have made his entrance rather anticlimactic. He had also updated his wardrobe. He still had his Otoge Cure standard issue boots, snake-patterned scarf, and trousers with the Wara shroud. However, he was now wearing a short-sleeved black jacket that was open and stopped above his midriff. His scar from Shikaku's attack was very visible, as was his previously hidden weapon, the Melody Arm. He held the long, chakra-enriched pipe in his left hand and slid it into a holster on his boot. There was another change he had made that the others were staring at intently. His Hitayate, Kinyuta Dosu, leader of Team Dosu, formerly of Kusagakure, formerly of Otoge Cure, currently a Kanagakure genin, ready to fight, sir. He gave a small bow to the proctor. The Sunakunoichi was having none of it. He's late for his match with the Pineapple Head. He's forfeited his match by default. Now get him off the field, or illug. Her speech was cut off as Dosu, channeling air out of the pipe, rocketed towards her and punched her in the stomach with his Melody Arm. He activated his Kayamaizen and punched again. She fell back a short distance, clutching her stomach until she started retching, throwing up in the middle of the arena. Dosu turned to the proctor. It was supposed to be a one-on-one between the Nara and myself, and the young girl over there attacked my opponent before you gave a mark. I could petition for her disqualification. He noticed a horrified look on her face between bouts of retching on the floor. However, I actually think we should continue the fight with all three of us. It ought to make up for certain matches being skipped over. He made it sound as logical as he could, and beneath his raps he smiled as the proctor nodded in agreement. The proctor raised his voice again to the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, this match will be a three-way battle. Nara Shikamaru of Konoha versus Sabaku no Temari of Suna versus Kinyuta Dosu of Konoha. If the combatants are ready, Temari pulled herself off the ground and nodded. Then begin. Inosen. In the audience, Baki gripped the railing tightly. One of Orochimaru's men had switched sides? How much did he know of the invasion? It is of no concern, Baki. He turned to face Gaara. He was one of Orochimaru's crash test dummies for whatever he did to Uchiha Sasuke. He was never part of the invasion plan. Baki sighed in relief and returned his attention to the fight. Inosen. Underneath his disguise, Orochimaru felt a knot of rage tighten in his stomach. That one of his experiments didn't have the good grace to die when he was no longer needed was something he hated, and worse still, that disobedient whelp had joined up with Konoha as well. You shall pay for your insolence, Dosukuen, with your life. Sat beside him, Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled and had an extra long puff of his pipe. The Kinyuta boy had been a tough egg to crack, but after much negotiation, he had agreed to help them. His knowledge of all the faces of Otogekire's elite and his talent for sketching meant that all the Jonin and ANBU had pictures identifying all the lead combatants in the service of Orochimaru. Forces had been scattered to watch over them, ready to attack at any moment. The Suna forces were still unknown, but it still meant that the invasion forces' overall efficiency had been more or less cut in half. Excellently done, old friend. I hope Orochimaru likes your next surprise, Danzo. Inosen. Temari launched another massive wind strike at her opponents, and both jumped away. These leaf rats are good at running away then. Shikamaru peered out from behind a tree and watched the Kunoichi work while trying to analyze the recent developments. I'm not going to lose this fight, but now it's two at once. Besides, a guy can't just go around and hit a girl, so... From the balcony, with a voice that disturbed the wildlife in Nami no Kuni, such was the volume it was at that time, Ino yelled, "Bust her up! Shikamaru! Get her with a 16-hit combo!" Yeah, Ino punched the air and Shikamaru sighed, feeling tired out just from the force of her resonating voice. On the other side of the arena, hidden behind a tree, Dosu shook his head in an attempt to stop his ears ringing. If that kind of voice is hereditary, she would be ideal as the first Odonin to wield a related Kekkei Genkai. He returned to analyzing his match. His attack on the Kunoichi told him her skills were more in the long-range field of fighting, but she wasn't without some skill. She had tensed at the right time and would likely have been able to counter his attack had it not been for the sound penetrating her. He also knew that she would keep her distance from him and would probably target him first. Her first mistake. At this time of the day, Nara would be the ideal first target. His shadows won't reach far, so he's the most vulnerable. Temari spotted Shikamaru in the patch of trees to her left. Let's see, he's a ninja that uses shadows, so he'll obviously try to lure me into the shade. Like I'll fall for that. That other one uses sound waves, and he has that pole that can fire airwaves. Like my war fan, but a great deal more suited to stealthy, specially aimed attacks. I can't see him, but I can't let him get too close. I was gonna make this flashy to play for time, but it looks like this match will take a while without any grandstanding. Inosen. Ino felt her jaw drop when she saw Choji pull out yet another bag of crisps. Is your stomach really fully recovered, Choji? Choji chose to ignore the question. Isn't Uchiha supposed to be fighting now? He noticed a vein on Ino's temple that was quivering and steadily getting more pronounced. Best change the subject from that skinny mute. Miu's the next head of the Akimichi clan. For Shikamaru to be in the finals. It seems really out of place for him, don't you think? Ino considered what Choji was saying. You were given time off training so you could recover, Choji, so you haven't seen it. But lately Shikamaru has been training properly, and while he can't breathe fire or make solid clones, he's really good at devising strategies. Like when he coordinated some of our missions instead of Asuma Sensei, and I don't think we'd have made it as far as we did in these exams if it hadn't been for him. He walked down there, and he wasn't pushed, and he didn't whine or anything. He seems like he's really revved up for this. She again burst from her seat, and her words woke the Kumogakure Jinchukuri Killer Bee from his dreams of rapping with the stars. Go, Shikamaru! Inosen. Shikamaru moved to another tree to get a view of the arena, looking for some clue as to how he might be able to beat two ninja that clearly approach fights the way he does. It was as it had been at the end of the match between Niji and Naruto. He looked up at Naruto, who was cheering him on loudly and with a smile on his face. And then he looked at the arena ground. That's right. He went in, and then that should work. He stepped down from the tree and turned slightly, entering Temari's field of vision with a large, knowing smile on his face. Temari scowled. What is doing with that dumb expression on his face? Is he making fun of me? She pulled her war fan back. Kamaitachi no Jutsu. A powerful gust rolled out of her. Up in the crowd, Tintin gasped at the attack that had banished all of her weapons as it tore into the trees that Shikamaru was standing by. Dosa watched from his hiding space. He looked over to where Nara had been looking, hoping to discern his opponent's plan. Wait, that is clever. That is very clever. And I know just how to beat it. But let's see him do it to her. Thin the competition for me. Dosa rushed forward and launched his Zankaha at the blonde Kunoichi, forcing her to leap and launch her Kamaitachi at him. Her attack overpowered his, and he pulled back, hiding away again. As she landed and the dust cleared, Temari saw a thin black mass rush toward her. A shadow. She leapt back, again and again. As she did so, it's starting to shrink. She finally stopped and scored a line across the ground in front of her. Ah, I have seen through your cage main no jutsu. She saw a tired look on his face, along with a long cut across his cheek. There's a limit to how much you can stretch and shape your shadow, isn't there? You can't stretch it any further than the original surface area of a shadow, am I right? He nodded, which would mean, judging by the distance from where he attacked from his shadow, from the furthest point the shadow from the stadium wall stretched, taking into account the possibility of him using the stadium's shadow as his own. There, she scored another line into the ground, a more solid one this time. The absolute limit of his shadow from him, his 15 meters and 32 centimeters. Shikamaru knelt down against the wall and closed his eyes. He then formed his hands into a shape with his fingers and thumbs touching their counterpart, with his thumbs the closest to his head. Inen, Yuhi Kurenai, Jinjutsu mistress of Konoha, turned to Sarutobi Asuma, Shikamaru's Jonin instructor. What sort of hand seal is that? I've never seen anything like it. Asuma chuckled and had to catch his cigarette as it fell from his lips. That's no seal. V Chapter 15, The Sound of Defeat, The Shadow of Death. The Windy Weasel? Yuhi Kurenai turned to her. Colleague and fellow team leader Sarutobi Asuma. Not a hand seal, but he has his hands in a strange formation and he's obviously concentrating. Asuma grinned and lit another cigarette. It's a habit of his. He's the kind of person who likes to slowly take his time. He's like one of those old geezers. That's why he plays games like shogi and go. I've been playing against him since he became my student, and this is what he always does when he's backed into a corner. He turned to see a confused look on Kurenai's face and started to chuckle, causing his thick sideburns to bristle with movement. It's a sign that he's working on a strategy. As such, I have never won a match against him. Understanding began to dawn on her. Not even once. He watched the Jinjutsu mistress' eyes squint with annoyance. You're speaking of strategies and games, Asuma. This is a real fight, Asuma, not another board game. Asuma swiped his hand dismissively. Those games are said to have roots as devices for tacticians to plot their wars with. You could say that Shikamaru is a shrewd tactician. Kurenai shook her head at Asuma's words. Shrewd? I've saw his grades from the academy when they were getting sorted into teams. He was supposed to be at the same level as Naruto. And you just saw Naruto beat a taijutsu genius who graduated at the top of his class. Asuma took a long drag of his cigarette and let the smoke linger in his mouth a while longer before letting it sift out slowly. He said it was too much of a hassle to move the pencil. It seems he slept through his written exams. I then got the idea he had a talent for strategy despite his grades, so I had him take an IQ test disguised as a game. I wasn't being all that serious, but Kurenai moved closer, motioning for him to continue. A true diamond in the rough. He's a super genius Kurenai, with an IQ over 200. Kurenai felt a cold chill go down her spine. Over 200. Looks like he's done planning. Inen, looks like you're finally going to be serious. The Suna Kunoichi pulled her war fan back. Kamaitachi no Hutsu. The flurry of wind shuriken surged toward Shikamaru. The Yunfnara pulled out a kunai and jumped behind a tree. There's no escape. The attack tore into the small group of trees, furiously ripping into the wood and leaves. As the Suna Kunoichi kept firing off the attack, Shikamaru carefully removed his coat while avoiding leaving his arms out of the safety of the tree. How long are you going to hide in there? Give up already. She felt herself losing her temper. Inen, does he really have some sort of strategy? Kurenai turned to Asuma with a rather mocking look. Asuma looked confused, like he couldn't understand what was going on. Probably. He's supposed to. Ino stood up again and started to yell loudly. What are you doing, Shikamaru? You're never going to get at her if you stay there like that. While she had hoped her tirade would motivate her teammate to do something, it did have a beneficial outcome. Kinyuta Dosu, with his sensitive hearing, fell from his hiding spot, and Temari focused her attack on him instead. Inen. Dosu fired a Zenkaha to dispel the Kamaitachi and ran for the nearby rock, only for a kunai to appear in front of it and explode. He turned and realized it could only have come from the forest as a Kamaitachi came straight at him. Damn that Nara creep. He must still be sore about what I did to the fatso. I can't dodge the blonde bitch's attack. I'll have to. The attack hit, and he exploded into a mass of straw. It glided through the Kamaitachi and circled round Temari. Finally, Dosu emerged and punched at her with the melody arm. She barely managed to block with a war fan, momentarily letting go to avoid the Kaiamaizen. Nevertheless, the Kunoichi was not unarmed. She quickly grabbed a kunai from her pouch and threw it. Dosu fell backwards, and Temari retrieved her war fan. With all the force she could muster, she brought the war fan down on the former Odonin's head. Dosu went down, and she turned her attention back to the Nara when a kunai flew towards her. And a shadow. Damn, I moved into close. Quickly she ran for the marker and opened up her war fan to block the kunai. From the safety of the line, she took a defensive stance and knocked away the kunai. The Nara's shadow reached the line and kept going. Shit. Temari jumped back further to avoid the black tendril and stared at the smirking pineapple head. So that's what you were doing? Whiling away the time until the sun dropped lower, so the shadows of the wall and yourself would grow larger. She felt like sneering. Judging from the height of the sun, this is the furthest he can reach. I'll stand here and taunt him. He'll push himself to reach me, and that'll leave him exposed. She puffed up her chest with pride and faced the crowd with a smug look. Kankuro screamed out to his sister. Temari, move! A massive shadow appeared at her feet and joined with the shadow. It grew larger and larger until it surged toward her. She tried to dodge, but it simply followed. The tendril swerved and weaved around her, trying to reach her. She looked up and saw the source of the extra shadow. His coat. Shikamaru had tied his coat and hitae together to create a makeshift parachute, using a kunai as a counterweight. Damn, she thought. He distracted me with his shadow attack so that I wouldn't notice what was going on above me then. When I finally see it, he attacks me from below. If I keep dodging like this, he'll just keep me moving till the shadows get large enough to totally reach me. She took hold of her war fan and used it to send herself to the other side of the arena, out of reach of the shadow. She then directed an attack at the parachute. With it down, his attack reach was crippled. With little to fear, she walked back towards her opponent and past the section of the area where the previous match had been particularly brutal. She smirked at her opponent. Shikamaru's face became stern. For you to evade that attack. Inen. In the audience, Kurenai was impressed with the performance of both ninja. She gave Asuma a sympathetic look. Seems his plan wasn't good enough. Asuma nodded. Indeed, he nodded. His opponent is pretty bright herself. She thinks ahead. Inen. In another section of the stadium, Tintin watched with clenched teeth as the kunoichi that had nearly snapped her spine defeat Shikamaru's attack. Damn, she's really strong. Father, what do you think Shikamaru's next move is? She turned to find her father no longer sitting next to her. Father, Ina-sen, the white-haired author of the Aika novels was trying desperately to watch the fight while trying to screen out his Pinkett students' ramblings about Uchiha Sasuke. In one sense, it had brought a feeling of nostalgia, reminding him of when Tsunade Haim had praised Orochimaru. Jiraiya, a voice called him, and he turned to face them. A green one-piece jumpsuit, orange leg warmers, a green bomber jacket, a long mullet of brown hair, and eyes almost permanently squinting. Is it you, Katanakaji-kun? Jiraiya smiled. It was his pupil and one of Minato's closest friends, Katanakaji. I almost didn't realize it was you. You were so quiet just then. He stood to look at his old student face to face, but when he got stood, a hand settled on his shoulder and pushed down. Hard. So hard he went through his chair and ended up sitting on the floor amongst the wreckage of the seat. While you were away, Naruto, the slug prince of Konoha, became my pupil, became employee of the month at the medical center, and defeated Hyuganiji. We can talk more about this, Jiraiya. Soon. I suggest you make sure you get your affairs in order. With that, he walked away. Jiraiya remained on the floor while Sakura, who had heard what Katanakaji had said, started on a rant about the many times Naruto has insulted her or interfered in her relationship with Sasuke. I get the feeling I have made a serious mistake. He mused to himself. Ina-sen. Temari looked up at the sun. If I keep this up, his shadow will keep growing and he'll keep expanding his reach. I need to end this now. With that, she planted her war fan into the ground and hid behind it. First, I'll create a Kage Bunshin and send it out to distract him. Then I'll push as much chakra as I can muster into a superpowered Kamaitachi. Right now, his shadow is. She saw a tendril reach out and used a hole in the ground as a marker to estimate its maximum reach. Good. She formed the hand seal. Time to begin the plan. Kage Bunshin, no dash, her whole body froze up. What the? My body is. She stood up and saw her opponent doing the same. Shikamaru smiled. Finally, Kage Main no Jutsu. Success. He allowed his eyes to drift slightly to the audience and saw Choji spluttering half-chewed crisps everywhere. Ino was cheering and jumping about too much to notice. The other Sunanin were both looking very confused. Naruto looked really happy. Naruto, please acknowledge the progress I've made thanks to you. Then he saw him, and he was approaching Naruto. Shikamaru turned away and tried to stay focused as he made Temari turn to look behind her. To answer your question, I can reach you because of what's behind you. Remember? Naruto dug a tunnel to ambush Hyuga in the last match. That hole behind you is connected to large hole here in front of you. No way. A shadow in the tunnel. Exactly. Ina-sen. Hey Niji, should you really be up and about now? I hit you pretty hard, and that seal removal still needs time to settle. Naruto looked at the Juken prodigy curiously. Niji came to stand at the balcony next to the blonde genin. I could say something similar to you, Naruto. The proctor was near to pronouncing you dead not too long ago. Niji turned himself away at this point. Fool! Why remind him of that? He has given me an incredible thing, and I remind him of that? Fool! He felt a hand touch his shoulder and was pulled back around to face Naruto. Stop moping, Niji. I'm still in one piece, and I would never want someone to hold back in a fight. Otherwise, how can you know you've really beaten an opponent? He said this with a grin, and Niji nodded in agreement. Yash, wise words, young Naruto. To unlock true strength, one must let the fires of youth burn bright on the battlefield. Might Guy stood behind them, with Lee beside him. Lee seemed embarrassed, standing amongst the ninja in crutches, but he breathed out and stood as resolutely as he could. Guy turned to Niji. Niji, I shall allow you time to recover from the match and the seal removal, but afterwards we're going to run punishment drills for your unyouthful actions, and then we can move on to some new training. I recently ran in my old sensei, and so I can now train you a special jutsu that should prove invaluable. He gave a thumbs up, and his teeth glinted in the sun. Niji could see that his sensei knew he regretted his actions, and so he wasn't as angry as he could have been. They all turned to watch the rest of the fight, and Naruto wrapped an arm around Niji to pull up to cheer Niji on until Niji started to join in on the cheering, the blonde's enthusiasm proving contagious. Ina-sen, Asuma smiled at his student's clever ruse. He kept attacking with his shadow to direct her towards that tunnel, like herding the Nara deer. He was so much more active in this battle, and so plainly obvious that the Kunoichi never took into account the idea of there being hidden shadows. Clever, Shikamaru. You planned so many moves ahead, like in a game of shogi. There's no way for her to escape. It's checkmate. Ina-sen, Temari gritted her teeth. This guy. That trick he pulled with his shirt was just to move me to here. He forced Dosu out into a fight with me for the same reason and to make me take care of him while he maintained his position. All of his moves so far. I thought they were desperate attacks, but all diversions. She felt herself being pulled forward, being forced to walk until she was face to face with the tactician who dwarfed her own strategic skills. You can't make me quit just by trapping me like this, so you better have something else, brat, she said with what little bravado she had left. Think, Temari, think. There's got to be a way out of this. Ina-sen. The crowds were cheering now. Though the matchup had seemed totally tame to everyone at first, the recent upset had drastically changed their opinion. It wasn't flashy or bizarre. It was simply one of the best tactical battles they'd seen. The older members of the audience started to chatter about how they'd done something similar in a game of shogi. Asuma started to clap his hands in approval. Choji had begun to tear through his snacks at an incredible pace, the exhilaration of the battle whetting his appetite. When suddenly, Ina-sen, from the corner of his eye, Shikamaru saw Naruto's arm around Niji's, and it tore at his concentration. He felt he had to see this properly, that if he did so it wouldn't be true, and the cage main fell apart. An opening. Temari felt her body relax, and aimed a solid kick into the Nara's face. He rolled with the kick and spun to deliver his own. It landed with a meaty thwack, and she felt her shoulder pop out of place. She dove for her fan and dragged as much chakra as possible out of herself and hurriedly crammed it into her war fan. Do it now. Do it quick before he has the chance to relaunch his cage main. From this close proximity, he'll be worse off than that Kinoic from before. She turned and swung, but stopped dead. The words didn't come out. They couldn't come out. She felt a strong grip around her neck, and it pressed harder. She let out a soft whimper as she saw Shikamaru standing a few feet from her. If he's there, then what's? Kahekubi Sivari no Hutsu. Shikamaru called out as he tightened his shadows around her neck. He saw her try to reach for her neck and find nothing to grab hold of. He started to walk over and felt the shadows strengthen with each step. Soon she lost the energy to scrabble at her neck, then her legs gave in. He knelt next to her. Be thankful I'm not the kind of ninja who likes to break the backs of a defeated opponent, because I don't think you've got a bushy-browed teammate who would come to your rescue. Finally, she passed out, and the stench of urine filled the young Nara's nostrils. He turned away and called away his shadows. The proctor stepped forward to announce the winner when suddenly, Zenkaha, a blast of decapitating airwaves tore apart the tunnel and the area that Shikamaru was standing. Pieces of straw in the air and on the ground started to twitch and move. They swirled and charged toward Shikamaru, who could do nothing but run. Finally, the straw stopped and formed a mass just above the unconscious Dosu. Another Dosu appeared and landed next to the one on the ground. Only he wasn't wearing the melody arm. Not bad, eh? But you didn't see that coming, Mr. Tactician. He crouched down to pick up the melody arm and put it back on. My melody arm uses Deadman's autopilot device built into it. It continues to attack and move the body to attack until it's destroyed. I attached it to this straw dummy and hid in the straw while you two battled it out and wore yourselves down for me. As Dosu aimed the pipe, Shikamaru looked around and then formed the hand seal to create two shadow copies. As the Zankaha tore across the arena, the three Shikamarus all jumped into the air. The attack struck too, but they quickly became smoke. Illusions. The real Shikamaru was just on the edge and was propelled to the side. Dosu watched as the pineapple head made a solid landing in a large puddle of blood. No, he predicted the direction of my attack and plotted where to land. That area there should be soft and spongy, still, perfect landing spot. What is this kid? With his hands and feet red with blood, Shikamaru ran to the side to avoid another Zankaha and threw a kunai in retaliation. It missed, but it did cause Dosu to stop attacking for a moment. Shikamaru stopped and turned to Dosu. I knew you were still active. I read a book once about the Wara Shroud and what it could do. And now you should quit. Dosu coughed in surprise, trying not to laugh. I should quit? You not got any tunnels near you, and you're too far away to use a shadow on me. Meanwhile, I've got you in my sights, and I've got a long-range weapon right here. Zankahan. The attack surged forward, but instead of moving, Nara just knelt down and laid two bloody hands on the ground. Fuinjutsu. Moko. Aye. The ground shook once more, and again it erupted with kunai and shuriken and all manner of weapons, all aimed at Dosu. They collided with the Zankaha, and though some shattered, the rest soon overpowered the attack. Dosu ran. How in the world did he do that? He didn't make it. He's not the caster. And this is some sort of Uzumaki clan special Fuinjutsu, nearly a bloodline. Blood. When he landed from a Zankaha, he landed in a puddle of it. He landed in a puddle of Uzumaki blood and then smeared it on the ground where that Uzumaki created the seal. He must have had this planned out the moment I reappeared. No, he said he'd known the moment he saw the Wara Shroud. He had this plan from the beginning. A large hammer managed to land a hit square in the back of the former Odonin, and he fell down hard. The weapons circled menacingly. Okay, I give. I quit. You win. Just call off the attack. The proctor raised a hand. Winner. Nara Shikamaru. The crowd roared with cheers for the young genin, and Naruto leapt down to congratulate his friend. Grinning like a madman, the orange genin pulled Shikamaru along for a victory lap around the arena, while some Irionin ran over to the two defeated ninja to see to their wounds. NSN. Choji finished his last bag of crisps. Man, Shikamaru has really changed this month. He's so motivated now. Ino looked over at her, pleasingly plump teammate, and saw his sad expression. He's been friends with Shikamaru longer than we've been a team. He must be worried that they're drifting apart. It's not like he has a lot of other friends. He doesn't hang out with many other ninja unless it's for a mission, and all the civilians our age make fun of him. I'm not helped much either, though, have I? Ino placed a comforting hand on Choji's shoulder. He probably just didn't want people to think our team was weak. Choji. We both lost, and that Suna team all got through. 2/3 of Team 7 got through too. I'm sure Shikamaru has a reason for this turnaround. You be right. The two genin jumped out of their seats when Asuma's voice appeared out of nowhere. Their Jonin instructor took up a seat next to them and lit another cigarette. Shikamaru made a little wager with me. If he won, we'd all eat at Yakinu Q for a week. All you can eat. I'd pay. If he lost, he'd pay. Asuma smiled as Choji burst off of his chair again and started to cheer loudly. Ino covered her face at the antics of her teammate. Ino looked up and asked her sensei a question. What happens if he wins the whole thing? Asuma blew out a large smoke ring and grinned at them. A year of all you can eat Yakinu Q. Choji heard this and simply passed out. Alma laughed and turned to the arena again. As he watched his candidate for promotion circle the arena, he considered his personality. Normally lacking in motivation, it could mean it allows him to make calm and collected decisions. He knows his strengths and skills, so he doesn't panic in battle or lose his cool. No matter what the situation, he can always act calmly. When people talk about the right mental makeup for a chunin, Shikamaru has all the qualities of a good leader. Izumo and Kotetsu were still trying to work out the amount they would have to pay to cover Uzumaki's ramen tab when they stopped to consider the victor of the last match. Izumo spoke first. When you measure the value of a small unit leader, it's often the case that protecting the team is more important than completing the mission. Kotetsu nodded. Yeah, in information gathering, you can't be saying, I completed my mission but my whole team got wiped out. You need a guy who can balance the risks, sacrifice, and the mission on a scale and make the best decision for the whole. If you can't act and think with the lives of your teammates as the top priority, then you have no place being a Chunin. In which case, I doubt that Nijigai will get put forward. I'm not sure with Naruto, though. He obviously has the moves, but I checked Team 7's mission reports, and I'm struggling to figure out what has been going on with their training. When we went for our exams, Sensei had us do at least 10 C rank missions. They have more D ranks than all the Genin teams put together, and only one C rank that got upgraded to B and included an S rank rogue ninja. However, he's been working at the medical center most of the last month, working as part of a medical team, and he spent a chunk of the match just trying to find out what Niji's beef was. That is a question then. Is that kid ready for Chunin? But there's another question that's bugging me right now. Really? What's that? Where's Uchiha Sasuke?